Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. We want to note that this meeting is being broadcast on the NUSD YouTube channel at the direction of the board. The broadcast may capture images and sounds from those attending the meeting. If you would like to make public comment on any item on the agenda or not on the agenda, please see staff at the far table and receive a card to make a comment. Thank you. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll now hear from Trustee Novato on items from closed session.
Good evening. The board met in closed session on the following items: public employee discipline, dismissal, release, information only. Thank you.
Can I ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Mack.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Millerick. All in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you. And can I ask for approval of the consent agenda? Are there any items that anyone would like to pull? No? Okay. So would anyone like to approve the consent agenda for this evening?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Trustee Millerick, thank you. And a second by Trustee Pickus. All in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you. Okay, we will now have announcements from the board, and we do have Dr. Sinyard as acting superintendent right now. Would you like to start or would you like to end?
Either or. I'm more than happy to start if you'd like me to.
Please do. That would
Okay.
be great. Thank you.
Great. Well, I wanted to congratulate everybody for some amazing graduation and promotion ceremonies. I had the opportunity to go to Linwood and Hamilton and Novato and San Marin, and what a great job. It was just wonderful community events, and thank you to everybody. And congratulations to the class of 2024. Our extended learning opportunity summer programs are up and running. Our ESY extended school year programs are underway, and we're just looking forward to all the fun activities our kiddos are going to have over the summer. And kind of to wrap everything up, a lot of professional development is happening right now over the summer. We've got folks going to conferences. We have our team starting to plan for next year. It's going to be a very busy summer for everyone, and we're already looking forward to the next school year. That's my report.
No report. Happy summer.
Nothing from me.
Just a couple of things. Really thrilled to be able to get out to a couple of graduations. That was one aspect I never even realized I got to do as a trustee, and it's one of the highlights of our year. And I also had the opportunity to get a check from School Fuel for the tour of Novato, and I was able to work with Eric Lucan and Mike Spikes. They were fabulous, and I picked up 33 helmets for students to be distributed to next as soon as we were back into school. So I'm really excited about that. And now I'm headed to do summer bucket list stuff with the kids. So.
Nothing announced, just wished I was here last week for the graduations. Was out of town for another one's graduation, but thanks.
No report.
I enjoyed many graduations. It was such a special time of year. Thank you to everyone that made those all happen, and all the teachers and staff that were so engaged with all our students in their exciting times. I also attended the School Fuel board meeting. They are currently looking for new board members. They would love to have some excited new volunteers. So if that's of interest to you, you can check their website. Thank you.
Thank you. I had the chance to participate in the Marin Oaks graduation. That's great. The other announcement I'd like to make is I will not be running for my seat for the December election, so my Area 2 will be open. And I look forward to talking to School Fuel and others. My community participation's not coming to an end, it's just changing form.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to presentation, sorry, I suddenly was confused. Local control accountability plan, local indicators presentation.
Hey, great. Thank you. And thank you, Ellen, for doing the slides for me. Okay, this evening I'm going to talk about our local control accountability plan, local indicators. And California's use a multiple measure system to assess how districts and schools are performing and how they're meeting student outcomes. And these measures are reported on the California dashboard, and they include both state and local indicators. And for indicators that don't have state level data, districts have to use the local indicator self-reflection tools to measure progress. And the presentation is basically talking about what a district must do. It has to annually measure its progress in meeting the requirements of the specific local control funding formula priority, report the results as a part of a non-consent item at a regularly scheduled public meeting of the governing board in conjunction with the adoption of the LCAP, and we have to report the results to the public through the dashboard using the self-reflection tools. And so, Ellen, if you could hit the next slide, thank you. These local indicators are in these conditions, and the first one is priority 1, which basically talks about the basic conditions of school, so that we have appropriately assigned staff and fully credentialed teachers, access to standards, aligned material, and that our school facilities are in good repair. And then the second priority talks about the implementation of state standards. And it's interesting that this self-reflection tool still says the new standards that are from 2010. So it's still kind of talking about how we're implementing state standards. Priority 3 talks about parent and family involvement and how the district seeks input for decision-making, promoting parental involvement for our unduplicated pupils, and promoting parental participation in programs for individuals with special needs. Priority 6 talks about school climate and kind of the student perception of school connectedness and school safety. And priority 7 talks about course access, that we have a broad course of study for our students. And number 8, that 8 priority is just kind of this, what are our local indicators? What are our local data telling us? And so, thank you, Ellen. The first one, kind of the first result that we need to report is priority 1. And currently, in the 23-24 school year, 95% of our staff, our teachers, were appropriately credentialed. 5% of our teachers are considered what's ineffective, and an ineffective teacher might be somebody who has only been teaching for 2 years, is on an emergency permit, kind of in certain areas to that extent. So this is kind of the norm now. It's about 95% is great. We obviously want 100%, but we work with staff if they are misassigned, and we help them try to get their credentials done within the first 6 months. The second one is we are very fortunate that we have 0% of our students. Everybody has standards aligned instructional materials, so we're in good shape there. And kind of for our facilities, we had 6 sites that are reported as fair. We self-report on our facilities. It's called the Facility Inspection Tool. It's our FIT survey, and it's kind of going through and saying, looking at our campuses and saying, are there areas of need that we have? You can rate yourselves as exemplary, good, fair. The categories that we had as fair were basically things like we had some light bulbs that needed replacing, so it wasn't significant, and that's something we can look at in the future, kind of talking about maybe that's not really a fair rating. I'd put that in the good category, but that's one of the categories. The second priority that I have, and Ellen, this is the last slide, so you're good, is kind of the implementation of state standards. And so we do a little staff survey where they complete the self-reflection tool, and they kind of rank yourselves in the following area: progress for providing professional learning of standards, progress in making instructional materials available in all classrooms, implementing policies and programs to staff to identify needs where instruction can be improved, and how well the district is progressing in implementing the standards. And kind of our self-ranking, our 5 is the highest. We have a number of 4s and 5s in these categories. With parent and family engagement, we talk about building relationships between schools and families, building partnerships for student outcomes, and seeking input for decision-making. And just in my first year here, I am thrilled with the amount of participation that we have from parents and staff members to really bring families together to the sites, to our decision-making process. So that's wonderful. With school climate, our report of school safety and connectedness, we use our Youth Truth surveys. And kind of I think the biggest thing too, which is a wonderful thing for this year, the feeling of safety has increased at all levels from elementary, middle, and high. Our elementary students are reporting feeling safe. Last year it was 62%, this year it's 66%, so upward trend. Middle school is 47 to 55%, it's a good jump. And finally our high school is 56 to 62%, which is wonderful. And kind of the highest related themes at our elementary level from the Youth Truth survey are belonging and culture. Middle school, the highest is belonging and peer collaborative culture. And high school, belonging and peer collaboration, and college and career readiness are the highest indicators based on the Youth Truth Survey. And finally, we have Priority 7, which is an access to a broad course of study. And so what we do is we look predominantly at our secondary schedules and make sure that we're offering a wide variety of courses, that students have access to career technical education classes, advanced placement, lots of electives, and kind of really how we're supporting our students to kind of fulfill their 4-year plans. So that is in a good standard too. And the wonderful thing about kind of our local indicators, when we report on them, it means that we have met them. So we get to mark on the dashboard that we have met them, we have discussed them in our meeting, and we will be uploading those to our dashboard in the next few days here. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. One of the key benefits I had when I was a high schooler and Santa Rosa JC was literally shared a property line with the high school. We had access to college courses. I understand one of the things that we're working on is working with the College of Marin. Is that covered in the current study, or is that a future objective?
It's both. So we are actually really fortunate right now, especially with our career technical education classes and trying to partner with College of Marin. Absolutely see expanded use of College of Marin's facilities and instructors and kind of our staff collaborating in the near future, because we have received a couple of grants that have been awarded for an early college and kind of working with our Compass program at Novato High School. So trying to target students to really have them understand what it's like to be on a college campus and really kind of improve our relationship. It's already a great relationship, but again, how we can still partner in a better fashion.
Thank you. Of course, we can always make it better. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just wanted to kind of put an extra plug in. It's Priority 3 involving parents and families. I know that we have new leadership in our special education department, and we've made a lot of progress in that communication this year, but I know that that's something that our community really would like, is more improved communication and just kind of building that bridge between our schools and our families as well. So just an extra little great tip there.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next item is non-agenda public comment. We have 2 speakers. First will be Russell Krug, and second will be Mark Dorian. You'll each have 3 minutes, and unfortunately the board is not able to respond back to any non-agenda public comment. And you can use this microphone here, and there's a timer just for your information.
Thank you. My name is Russell Krug. I've been a Novato resident for 40 years, and for those 40 years I've been an intermittent tennis player through my career, and through all that time the school tennis courts have been available for public use, except for these last 4 years. So we appreciate that COVID required isolation and non-use of such facilities. We appreciate that we did have a lot of civil unrest, and there was a lot of vandalism and so forth, and especially in the summer of 2020. But those things have kind of gone away. COVID is very sensitive to sunlight. It's better to be outdoors and indoors. And the school facilities are on campuses that are not enclosed. And so if somebody wants to create vandalism, the buildings themselves are much more susceptible to vandalism than tennis courts. So we're keen on reopening the tennis courts, reopening to public use. Students need something to do during the summer when school's out. Each high school has more tennis courts than the entire city of Novato has for public use, and they're oversubscribed. We have our first ever Parks Master Plan recently created, and they found that the city of Novato is short compared to cities our size. Cities our size typically have about 10 tennis courts. We have 4, we're short 6. If either of the high schools open up, we substantially close that gap. So, you know, we're here to try to plead to reopen that. I'm a member of the Novato Tennis Club. We've been here for 61 years, and we have 125 members right now, and we're speaking on behalf of the tennis community. One of the things we do is advocate for this sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, board members. My name is Mark Dorian. I've been a resident of Novato for 35 years and have been a tennis player almost that whole time. Just to echo some of the things that Russ mentioned, our Novato Tennis Club was founded in 1963, and from that point on has been promoting tennis for the public most often in Pioneer Park. As Russ mentioned, the city has only 4 public courts. Prior to COVID, it didn't seem to be a problem for any club or the general public to walk onto a court either at Pioneer Park or any of the schools, as you know, Novato High School or San Marin, including a couple of courts at Hamilton, which are under the authority of the Coast Guard, thank you, and also 6 courts at Indian Valley College, Community College. When COVID hit, as you know, everything shut down. We started doing investigation, or trying to find out when COVID cleared up why all these courts were shuttered. We did have a very nice meeting with the school board at that time, which included a lot of transitional staff who really hadn't had the knowledge of the tennis club and its interests, or the tennis community's interest in tennis in all these courts. Point being that school district, Indian Valley College, all used this time period to affect the improvements, which were resourced by bond funds and other things, and did a fantastic job of upgrading all these courts. Well, when we all came out of COVID, everything had been shuttered to us. We had met with the school board. They were kind enough to allow our tennis club to utilize San Marin courts for Saturday socials, which invite the public every Saturday morning. We gained that access back, but still the high school courts have remained closed to us. What we're asking is for those to be opened. We would like to encourage the school board, as we have encouraged the city, to get back into a reciprocal agreement for the public to be able to use all these courts.
Thank you.
There's more to it. There's more history if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're on to item 10A. Nope. It's one of those days, I'm sorry. We are on to 12A, maintenance and operations update.
How you guys doing tonight? There you go. Get to where we're going here. All right. So I wanted to do this. Josh and I had talked, and I had asked if there's a way that I can go ahead and present to the board what the MOT, Maintenance Operation Transportation, actually has been doing and does and continues to do for the district. And I really wanted to get up in front and just kind of give you guys a rundown on what we have done kind of just this year and break it down to what we're looking forward to in the future as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. Right here, MOT Department Overview. This is what I'd like to have on our webpage underneath our sheet, so that way everybody can kind of go on there and look and see that the MOT Maintenance Operations Transportation Department main goals to support education process, meet the needs of NUSD, and some of the reasons why, or some of the ways we do that is by supplying essential materials to the sites, transporting students to and from schools, maintaining facility buildings, landscapes, and athletic fields, and then keeping NUSD in compliance with state regulations, one of them being the FIT and the Williams Act and all that good stuff. Next, this is the breakdown. I think when I first got hired, we had a different breakdown of this, if you all remember. We had 3 managers, and it was condensed quite a bit. I brought with me my managerial staff, Trevor Smith, who's the operations manager. Wave your hand. There you go. Melissa, transportation manager. And kind of have it broken down to what each one is kind of oversees. You know, Trevor is, underneath him, has got the grounds foreman, and he has got 3 groundskeepers 2s and 5 groundkeeper 5s, as well as he's in charge of all the night custodians and the roaming subs, as well as substitute custodians. Not to mention, he also oversees the facility use program that is on the Facilitron. Melissa, she oversees the transportation and the fleet staff. She's got a dispatcher. She's got 1 mechanic foreman, 2 mechanics, 4 car drivers, 3 bus drivers, and, huh?
Should be 13.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, there should be 13, I'm bad. 13 bus drivers and 1 substitute driver. And that substitute driver, we're keeping busy all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, and then, lowly me, I've got 6 craft workers too. Now, it's in grand scheme of things when we have 13 sites. And when you break these numbers down and you see out of those 13 school sites, that's not including the district office, that's not including the library, that's not including the charter school, not including San Andreas that we have to take care of every year as well. You know, the guys do a tremendous amount of work. And I'm very proud of them, and these 2 here keeping things up and running as well. Next, maintenance. 7 maintenance and craft worker 2 employees. This is what we basically do. Our daily work requests typically come first, and those are what we get from the sites daily, or as I like to say too, in the evening, because we get a lot of them in the evening. I'll see they'll get put in at like 11 o'clock at night. We do preventive maintenance. We're going out and exercising our valves, making sure that they're turning right so we don't have to shut school water down. The heating and ventilation, HVAC, we're constantly changing filters for those as well. Electrical work, locksmithing, we'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later. The painting, plumbing, carpentry, your basic trades. As well as doing exterior pest controls. We're working on gophers, I'm telling you. They are tough, but we're working on them. And we also have a lot of emergency responses. You know, sewer backup. We've got gas leaks sometimes, broken keys and locks, fire alarms, burglar alarms, you name it, it happens. We also do some miscellaneous stuff, which is like moving curriculum and furniture. We have we build and repair furniture as well. So, you know, a lot of things that the guys are doing. And then in the grounds department, Trevor's got 9 grounds employees. And they're responsible for the mowing, edging of the lawns, athletic fields, mowing, irrigation, aerating, and seeding. When I got here, we were missing a lot of the seeding and aeration. So we were able to go ahead and implement that, and I know, Greg, we've talked a lot about fields and maintenance and all that as well. Plus, we're doing trimming of the trees and hedges, repairing, replacing irrigation systems. We've upgraded our controllers. Trevor had upgraded the controllers to Hunter controllers. Replacing, we're in the middle of looking at and going over and looking at our play structures. I'm sure you guys have been aware of that as well. But we do order parts for the play structures. Now, I'm sure that you guys have heard sometimes it takes a long time to get a play structure. But that's what's tough when they're coming from back in Milwaukee and we put the order in and they tell us and it's going to be there in a couple days, and 6 months later down the road, it still hasn't come. We're repairing fences, fixing and patching asphalt, as well as exterior pest control, like we had talked about. This is something that I really wanted you guys to see too. Work orders that we received from all sites this year. Okay, from July to May is 2,460 work requests. Now that's 9 guys and nine grounds and the 7 maintenance. Okay, for 13, well, more than 13 sites. Out of that, we have completed 2,397 of those. That gives us a completion rate of 97%. I'm proud of that. I think the guys, they bust their butt, and it does show. And to me, that's an amazing number. I've worked for 2 other school districts, and this is the highest that I've seen. So I'm very proud of them about that. Transportation. Driver's responsibilities. Transporting special education students safety to and from schools. They have to attend in-service meetings 10 hours. Maintain their CPR first aid certificate. Cleaning assigned vehicles to maintain appearance, sanitation, and safety. Prepping variety of documents, incident reports, safety checks, student counts. Assisting students into cars, seat belts, and wheelchairs, staying up to date with their school bus requirements and safety regulations. And a lot of this, thanks to you, the board, we were able to do in-house because we were able to send Melissa to school to get the training so she can be a trainer. So that was a big plus on our end, and it's great having her here to be able to do that. She also has the 3 mechanics with the 1 foreman. So 1 foreman, 2 mechanics, and they have to diagnose these things. You know, their job is to maintain all the equipment, all the vehicles in the district, golf carts included. Okay, so they have to make sure that they're doing their preventive maintenance. They have a list that they go by, and they bring vehicles in and out. We get notified, hey, this is ready for smog. They inspect all district vehicles, perform road tests, preparing documentation of work performed. They make sure that way if we ever get audited by CHP, Melissa has all that. Monitoring and keeping records up to date, fabricating parts and, for repairs, and responding to road calls regarding disabled vehicles and performing emergency services. When our buses are out, we have a mechanic on call. We have a mechanic at the shop. We have to. It's just something that happens, and we just can't let a bus out there or a mechanic leave until the last bus shows up. Savings in the transportation. I didn't go over that on that slide where it showed the breakdown of how many positions we have open. Do you mind if I go back there real quick? So if you look down here, you'll see the open positions. We have night custodians, 1 at Pleasant Valley, night custodian at Novato High School, roaming custodian 1. We have open position of 5 bus drivers and the car drivers, 3 of those. Now we'll go back over here. With the addition of the 3 white fleet vehicles and 3 car driver positions, the transportation department was able, remember we did this last year, was able to save the district roughly around $500,000. And that was us not taking cabs. That was Melissa being on it and making sure that she was on it and not taking cabs. With those open positions that I said that we had, if we were able to do that, I can't tell you how much we could save, but obviously the record shows that we could save more money for the budget as well. So we're looking forward to filling in those remaining positions and see what we can do next to get that going. I brought Melissa and Trevor up here not just to brag about them, but also if you had any specific questions that you guys want to ask, that's all fine. The safety that that I want to talk to you a little bit about now is we're in a process, and I think I've mentioned it to you prior, but we're in a process of rekeying the district buildings, the sites, to the Primus key, which is a cut key, and I don't know if they have them or not. If you got a key to get in this door, they do. But on the side of the key, there is a cut that we own as a district. We own that cut. Nobody can get it. They can't go to Peony. They can go to Peony with one of our keys and say, copy this. they're not gonna be able to do it. They won't be able to use it. Our side cut is what we own, and Novato has it, and it's, you know, it's one out of the 11 western states that we have. So we're changing everything over to that Primus key cut. We've got a few sites that are done right now, and we are working forward to moving ahead and getting the other sites done as well. We're repairing and replacing fences, border fences, you know, neighbor fencers and all. We've added security lights. We've added a few security lights over to Linwood on the back of their portables, as well as that fence between the school and the apartment complex. We have North Bay Security Group walking the sites on the weekends, and they send us a report weekly. Every Monday, I can go in there and look and see, you know, were there any doors open, what they find in the parking lot, and we share it as a department. So if there is a door that's open, I can let Trevor know to go talk to that custodian who was at that site. We are updating fire alarm panels. Our fire alarm panels that we have at the majority of our sites right now, I can't even get parts for. It's the Faraday parts, and you know we're scrimping by. As you know, with the bond, when we're doing something, you know, when we've gone through and we've upgraded the fire alarm panels to a silent night panel, which is newer, it's improved, and it's 10 times better than what we have. The one that we have right now is Dinosaur. You know, plain and simple. And we've updated our intrusion alarms as well, making sure that instead of a generic code being out for everybody to use at a site, every individual has their own code. We can monitor who goes in, who goes out, who forgot to set the alarm. So, you know, we're just being a little bit more adaptive towards that and looking towards the safety. And that's it, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Tony. I had actually a couple of just little things. One was in reference to your maintenance numbers, the number of service work orders. I'm talking.
Oh, like, I'm looking. I'm hearing it. I'm not seeing.
I'm over here. I know these new microphones are kind of cool, but yeah, the voice kind of booms out. So the work orders. I know a while ago, I believe there was new software that was purchased to streamline the work orders that were coming in. It was like 2 years ago.
No, this is the same that's been here since I've been here.
Oh, it has. Oh, maybe we're just using it differently. I know that I was working with a couple school sites a couple of years ago to get them more online, that they were getting more online use of however the system was. So I guess forget my question. I was going to ask how it seems like that's going pretty well, or making things go easily.
And I could touch base a little bit on it. At the school sites, what we have is, because we want people to let the principal and the office manager know what's going on. So the access to the school sites are the office manager and the principal. If we had teachers, you know, I mean, we'd be flooded, inundated, really. Someone would have to sit at the desk and just look at all these work requests. So we have it where they streamline it for us, to us.
Okay.
But they also look through it and say, is this a custodial duty or is this a maintenance duty? So that way we're not hitting, you know, honestly, we've gotten some work requests where it says my windows need to be washed. You know, and I politely say, hey, you know, that's kind of a custodian thing. We don't want the maintenance to go up and wash a window. So we get things. We get duplicates as well if we have too many people doing it. That's why some of these numbers, you know, the numbers look, you know, why didn't we get them all done? So.
Well, I know that you would streamline, or it was going a lot smoother. At least that's what I heard.
Yes.
I had mistakenly assumed that it was the software that was being used. So whatever you're doing, I'm glad that's working really well.
Yeah, no, it's going fine. It's the same one.
So also with the software, going to Facilitron, I think Josh had mentioned maybe at some point is that working effectively in terms of booking?
The Facilitron?
Mm-hmm.
I believe it is. I mean, Trevor can speak more too because he's on it more,
Yeah.
but I believe it is.
Yeah. So Trevor Smith, operations manager. I think Facilitron on my end is very user friendly. I've helped a lot of community members in the 4 years that I've been here go through the process of using that platform as well. And the feedback that I get is pretty positive. And yeah, I think it's working pretty well.
Okay, good. That's
Yeah.
good to know. I mean, especially since we have nice and updated facilities, making sure that, you know, the community can use them and sign up to use what they would like to use. And the only other question I had was actually what you went back to about the open, and I'm glad it's 13 bus drivers. I thought we only have 3 bus drivers. But the open positions, I know we just passed, or we approved an agreement so that hopefully it would be easier for you to be able to contract bus drivers. And is that, I know it's kind of been new, but optimistic on being able to find people through that?
Yeah, they're finding a lot of people that are car drivers, in a sense, so I can get them in and then train them.
Oh,
Which I just had one come through, was a car driver initially, and she just became a school bus driver. So I just did an interview, I think with 2 were from that company and 2 were just outsiders. So I
oh,
putting
perfect.
a position out for one of them.
Okay, wonderful. Happy to hear that. Thank you.
Yes.
A couple of questions. I have some additional work items for you here that I'd like to talk about. That
Let's hit it, man.
So, first of all, thank you for bringing forward the issue of the fire alarms and their current status of needing replacement. I've been around long enough that we've replaced phone systems now 3 times. Clearly, and I don't think we've ever replaced the fire panel, so they're probably 30 years
I
old.
was gonna say it shows.
Yeah, and control of that fire system is important, so I'm gonna encourage the CFO to look at that and maybe figure out a strategy to, if you can get some guessing numbers on how we might fix that over time, because it shouldn't last too long. We should be addressing that kind of issue. The other, and that would include intrusion alarms as well, so on IS, so that, you've been rekeying the fields, I know, so, because I went over to Sinaloa to try to get in, and I was told I have to have a special key or a special code.
Yeah,
I know that's work you're doing. Could you describe it a little bit?
Yeah, if you remember when we were talking about doing the new fields at Sinaloa and at San Jose, one of the big concerns was how do we maintain and how do we take care of our fields and so on and so forth, yet still allow the community to use the fields. So what we've done, and Josh has backed us up 110% on this, is we have put together those card readers.
Mm-hmm.
So what Trevor and I end up doing was, and it was through the bond. So, I was working with it through the bond on this. What we had done is we purchased the card readers, we purchased the cards, we purchased the software. Myself, Trevor, and our locksmith that I use at our maintenance shop are all trained on issuing these cards out. So that way you can have 2 individuals. So they're numbered. That number has got the individual's name on there. They pay $20 for the card. They return the card. They get it back. But it also is allowing the times that we set that they can go in. So that way it's set after hours of school and then at dusk.
Okay.
And during the weekend, we have it open. I believe it's from like 6 until 9, so that way people can run the track and things as to that.
Great. Another item, the workload that comes out of the bond program, every time a contractor comes, the financial officer brings forward a bond completion project. We got a new performing arts building, or we're going to add a new transformer to Novato High because we have to upgrade the amps on the campus. Mm-hmm. Every one of those contracts, when they're done, they deliver a package of documents that comes with it. Not only did the transformer get bolted to the ground, but
You're talking about closing documents.
Yeah, closing document, exactly. Do those come to you, and you get a chance to review those before, as part of the district acceptance process? For the ones that are in your area?
So,
not IT, for
yeah,
example.
no, it's not in IT. They are kept in my area. And for instance, this is the first year that we haven't had a bond department. So I have taken that on.
Yep.
And I have done that in the past at other districts that I've worked at, which I'm fine with. Yes, to answer your question, yes, I do get those. Mm-hmm. And I can, I have them at my whim where I can look at them, see what's going on, and we can make sure that things are caught up. If there's something that happens that is under warranty, I can go to it, know who's doing what, and I can call those people. We've already done some of the things. And so, yeah, to answer your question, yes.
Okay. So
That has
those-
nothing to do, and just so you guys know, I tried to keep the bond thing out of it and tried to just to focus on the maintenance because, that's
Like I said, I had extra work items here I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all
All
good.
that stuff that you were skipping around.
Yeah.
Good. Because it's a big chunk of work.
Yeah.
As that stuff comes in, making sure you've filed the records and we have them as long-term records and they're
Mm-hmm.
permanent and there's warranty windows and it's not zero effort to get that work done.
Right, absolutely.
Do you have any responsibility for the food service refrigeration, freezing solutions? Are you managing that process as well?
No, well, tell me about it and maybe I can
No,
help.
I mean, we have freezers to keep our food, so we buy it, ahead of time, so it goes to, but those refrigeration units are complicated.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're talking about at food service?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can help Cody program what he's got if he has to have it set through at a different temperature. I haven't heard anything, so I don't know.
Okay.
But if there's ever something, I mean, we've gone down there and fixed the doors because somebody's bumped into it with a forklift or something like that. So
Yeah, okay, good. So the other one, the last item is Internet of Things. We have a Pelican system to
Yes.
manage all the thermostats, which I believe is under your responsibility.
Yes.
That runs across the district network.
Yes.
So when my daughter was teaching at Novato High over Christmas vacation, I went down to help her move some furniture, and the furnace in the teacher's lounge was running full blast. It was freezing outside, but that room was toasty, but nobody was in the room. Nobody was going to be there for 2 weeks. The idea of going down and adjusting the thermostat for a 2-week window and then adjusting it back was too labor intensive. But now we have better tools. So do we use that IoT solution to manage our energy use across
yes, we
time?
can.
Okay, so
We can set
long
schedule, to
question,
answer your
but-
question, we can set schedules up and during vacation time, we can turn them down or turn them off altogether. We set the schedule up to start on a certain specific date, at a certain time of year, time, date, year, and it'll keep track on that.
So if you take a holiday, you can turn it off for 1 day.
Yes.
But you couldn't do that manually because it would have been too labor intensive.
Well,
At every campus, you'd have had to go around and turn them all off.
right, yes, exactly. So, and in case of a fire or something like that, where we're getting bad air quality, I can go in and hit a button and it shuts them all down. Okay, so that way there's nothing that comes through.
Thank you for the information. Thank you, sir. All three of you, thank you.
I couldn't do it without these two guys. I mean, they're, yeah. So,
Thank you so much for tonight's presentation. I still remember Melissa's proposal from last year about the cost savings. I was really impressed with that, and I'm really impressed with your completion rate, 97%. That's pretty awesome. Just a quick question for you. I know that we have a lot of employees, like our food workers, our groundskeepers that don't speak, or English is not their primary language. How are we conducting trainings for our employees that English is not their primary language and still don't speak the language
Right.
very well?
I'll just say what I have, and then I'll let Trevor, because Trevor is the one that holds the trainings for the night custodians for that. We do have regular night custodian meetings. We want to have more. And we do end up having possibly, one of our maintenance staff come in who is bilingual. Not to mention, we also have night custodians that are bilingual. So that way we, when Trevor's talking or when I'm talking, they are translating. They're sitting off in the corner and translating, and they do ask questions, as well as they've gotten so techie as well that they have the app on their phone. So when we're talking, they're reading what we're saying to them in Spanish, and then they're conversing back to us as well. So I'll let Trevor speak a little bit if you will. Yeah.
The other key part that we've done is use language line. I'll call the live operator. And I've had some conversations before where we've used 2 languages at once for a meeting. That can get a little bit more challenging, but we've been able to work through it. But to touch on what Tony was saying, we have had crafts workers sit in on the custodial trainings or grounds if they needed it, and they're there in the corner translating to those individuals.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation.
All right. Thank you.
All three.
Okay, next up, 13A, approval of AB 1200, disclosure of proposed collective bargaining agreement classified school employee association CSEA, unrepresented groups, management supervisors, confidential, and associated salary schedules.
I didn't get all that. Can you say that one more time?
Won't do it.
So yeah, tonight we're bringing forward the final AB 1200 for this year. We brought the AB 1200 last month for NFT. This is the outcome of negotiations and basically is the financial position due to negotiations. This is also important that it's the first approval of tonight's meeting because this actually affects this year's budget. And our budget that we will be asking for you to approve later on in the night takes all of this into account. So we basically set it up that way. So tonight we are asking for approval of the AB 1200. It also includes the salary schedules for all of CSEA and the unrepresented groups. Oh, and one more thing. It was approved by MCOE as well.
Thank you. Questions, comments, or a move to approve? That was Trustee Gasson with a first. Trustee Mack with a second. Conversation. Okay, all in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have 13B, approval of 2024 through 2027 Local Control and Accountability Plan and 2024-2025 Local Control Funding Formula Budget Overview for Parents.
Okay,
Dr. Sinyard.
Thank you. And tonight, staff is asking that the board approve the Local Control Accountability Plan and the Local Control Funding Formula Budget Overview for Parents. At our meeting on June 11th, we had our public hearing meeting, and we did not receive any comments or concerns for changes from the community. And we would like to take this opportunity again to thank everybody who gave their time, completed surveys, helped us complete this document, and we're very excited to move forward for the next 3 years with our current new LCAP, if the board so chooses.
Questions, comments, or move for approve? Trustee Butler with a first. Trustee Pickus with a second. All in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, 13C, approval of the 24-25 Local Control Accountability Plan, or LCAP, federal addendum.
Thank you. And the Local Control Accountability Plan Federal Addendum is an item that is to be reviewed annually to update any changes in our federal funding. The original document was approved in, I believe, the 2018-2019 school year. And every year we kind of look at this to see if we've made any major changes. This year we've updated some information, and it's basically explaining how the district will spend its title monies to support the goals and objectives of the LCAP. So as we have a new LCAP, we have added some of the new information to this document, and it is now reflecting the new changes. So it kind of covers our Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV monies. So requesting approval for that document.
Trustee Butler moves. Any second? Trustee Mack, any questions, comments? Okay, all in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
13D, approval of Novato Unified School District's 24-25 budget.
Hey, trustees, tonight we're bringing to you the approval of the 24-25 NUSD budget. Just wanted to talk about what changes had happened between the last budget and this one. We feel that it actually moved in a positive direction. It's even a little better than it was at the time. We got the retroactive payment for classified, certificated, and unrepresented. They're all entered into this agreement as an outcome of the AB 1200s. And it was a reduction in the estimated cost. So we estimated a little bit higher than it actually turned out to be, which is great, right? We try to budget a little conservatively. There was some addition of some arts TOSAs that were not in the preliminary budget. We had some property and liability insurance renewal came in slightly lower than projected. There was removal of some estimated reductions that weren't tied to specific plans. So he basically said, well, there's no funding for this. How are we going to take that out? But since we haven't actually figured out how we're going to take that out yet, we kind of put them back in there. In other words, we have a more accurate budget. So as we had cleared up more expenses that we didn't see anymore, we're like, okay, well, we need to be more accurate on each of these other items. And then there was also an addition of a grant that I wrote in that it was prospective at the time of the last, but we've actually been awarded that grant, and that was a $250,000 early college, middle college dual enrollment grant. We also got word from the governor and the California legislature that they are moving forward with the 1.07% COLA, and some of the things that we were really, I guess, worried about of it maybe being worse than projected didn't turn out to be true. It was really a status quo kind of thing. For us, it's really the May revise and what came out at the end were very, very similar. And then that leaves the multi-year snapshot. So for the multi-year snapshot, we see that, excuse me, we are positive all 3 years. Again, we don't certify a budget as positive, qualified, or negative, but if we did, this would be a positive budget. And there is a discussion about commitment, a commitment of funds. That was definitely a discussion at the end of last year. So what we see is that it's because the rainy day fund at the California state budget level was not touched this year, that commitment of funds requirement is still active for this year. It looks like it will not be for next year. So that means that if we are over 10%, we must commit our ending fund balance. That you have to take into effect, or into account, Fund 17 as well. With those two, we are over 10%. But Fund 17 is already committed by Resolution 18, 2015, 2016. So the creation of the fund committed that fund because you stated in that fund what it was created for, and nothing has changed since then. So taking out Fund 17, you have 9.5, which is below the 10%, which means we do not need to do any additional commitments. It can just be considered as used for operations of the organization. So what is next is that if we approve the budget tonight, we'll be looking for any trailer language that comes out of the California legislature, which could potentially mean that we need to do a 45-day revise. But since we already had approval of the budget, that's probably not likely. So with that, I'm asking for any questions, and then, of course, approval of the 24-25 budget.
Question from Trustee Gasson?
Thanks for explaining the Fund 17, because what I was noticing, and I've been trying to be mindful of, is we had passed even prior to the 15, well, maybe it was around that time, that we wanted a certain percentage, which we seem to be slipping below. And I know that there's been other laws, the 10%, and we're only required to do 3%. But I'd like to make sure that we're 3% is not a whole lot when we're looking if something does happen. And as depending on how the state goes in the next year or two, I just want to be mindful that even though that's our only requirement and we may have a cap of 10%, being able to, we put a large chunk into deferred maintenance, I think 1.4 million or something like a year and a half ago. And it looks like we went through that. So just want to keep an eye on how we're doing that and looking outside of the box between those requirements while making sure that we can, be financial stable or sustain ourselves if things do get tougher next year.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, I think
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Trustee Millerick. Seconded by Trustee Pickus. Thank you. Comment, question? Okay, all those in favor? 7 unopposed. Thank you. Next up, we've got 13E, approval of resolution number 33, 2023-2024. Determining the use of educational, I don't have it.
Educational protection account.
Protection, thank you. I should be wearing my glasses. I don't know if you can all see that I keep doing this. Thank you. Continue, please.
Yes, so the creation of the EPA, the Educational Protection Account, for Novato Unified School District, this is incorporated into our LCFF funds. So for us, it's not really like an extra pot of money, but just like how in the LCAP, we have to talk about our supplemental as if it was separate and come up with a plan for it, you also have to do that for the EPA. This is a very regular resolution. It's going to come forward every single year, and we're going to say, this is how we're going to spend the money. Well, you only spend the money one way, and that's on teacher salaries. The EPA was created for teacher salaries. It is meant to be spent on teacher salaries, and Novato exclusively spends it on teacher salaries. So we would like your approval of resolution, what is that, 33, 2023, 2024.
Questions, comments? Trustee Gasson.
Sorry, I'll just keep asking questions. So you sort of said it. When I was reading this, I was a little worried because it's $3 million. So it's rolled into the funding we already have, but there was something on here that indicated it may end. So, or maybe that was the other one. I'm sorry, there was a couple things.
Yeah, basic aid districts actually get this money on top of their property tax dollars. LCFF districts get it rolled into the LCFF
Okay, so there's
dollars.
not a separate budget line. It's just the amount.
It is a
this
separate
just
budget line, actually. It's resource 1400.
resource. Okay.
1400 is the EPA account. And that has a one transaction in, here comes all the money, one transaction out, staff salaries.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And so even if it did end, it wouldn't impact us. It would impact the way Prop 98 funding happens, and therefore that could then impact us long range. But our LCFF dollars is set on
Right.
a different number.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have a first. This is a roll call vote. We have a first by Trustee Mack. Second, Trustee Gasson, thank you. Trustee Butler.
Aye.
Trustee Gasson.
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson, aye. Trustee Lametta.
Aye.
Trustee Mack.
Aye.
Trustee Millernick.
Aye.
Trustee Pickus.
Aye.
Thank you. And next we have 13F, approval of Resolution 34, 2023-2024, authorization of the tax anticipation note, or TAN, for 2024-2025.
Yes, this is another one of the regular end-of-year resolutions. A TAN is basically saying if the district is going to have a negative cash flow. So even though at the end of the year we show, hey, we have money that is owed to us, but maybe the government has not paid it to us yet, therefore our cash has gone negative. This allows us to borrow from the county treasury up to 85% of our anticipated property taxes, which is about $40 million. We do not anticipate actually needing it, but this is a requirement from our county office, and it's a good requirement because that means it's already in place, ready to go, so that there isn't us having an emergency meeting to be able to pay payroll or something like that. But because of our bond fund and the fact that we actually do have a good amount of cash in our general fund, this will not be needed this year.
Questions, comments? Who would like to? Oh, yes? Sorry, I'm not used to you being over
No,
here.
that's fine. No, you're elbowed. So explain why, because we still have construction bond money sitting in our account, why we probably won't need this TAN's approval. Not that we shouldn't pass this, but
Yeah.
explain that, please.
So we're allowed to what's called interfund borrow, and all of our bond money is held in Fund 22. That cash sits there until we send the check out in the mail, right?
To the construction.
To the construction company, to the vendor, whatever we're purchasing with that. Until that, we can utilize that money, basically borrowing from ourselves for free. There's no interest charge that we charge ourselves. If we borrow from the county treasury, we get charged a percentage. It's very low, it's about 1%, but when you're talking $40 million, that's a lot of money. We are not anticipating needing to borrow because, like I said, we already have good cash, but then we get two large chunks of money from property taxes that hit around December and around May, and that will keep us in the positive. But even if we did go negative, now we have this $40-50 million in bond cash that's sitting there. Even though that money's allocated, it hasn't been sent yet. And so therefore, it's still sitting there waiting for us to use.
And so then this is just one more layer of protection beyond those layers of protection.
Because we never want to go borrow from like a bank. This is basically our bank, and this allows us to borrow if that need ever arose.
Okay. I'll move approval.
Okay, we have a first by trustee Millerick. Trustee Mack with a second. This is also a roll call vote. Trustee Butler.
Aye.
Trustee Gasson.
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson, aye. Trustee Lametta.
Aye.
Trustee Mack.
Aye.
Trustee Millerick.
Aye.
Trustee Pickus.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next up, 13G, approval of declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 24-25 school year.
Thank you. Again, we're asking the board approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the coming school year to meet our annual obligation to the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. And we're required to do this, and then kind of, there's always concerns that sometimes we have areas of credential areas that have remained fairly status quo, that we're struggling finding teachers to replace or serve in these capacities. This has kind of been, again, status quo for the last few years. We struggle sometimes with single subject limited assignment permits, and they're getting a little bit more specific each year. We're putting this document forward, and it still can be amended if there's additional need that comes out, if we're still unable to hire folks that we would need to.
Questions, comments, approvals? Trustee Butler moves to approve. Second by trustee Gasson. Any other? Okay. Trustee Butler was the first and trustee Gasson with the second. All those in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, 13H, approval of the new job description, paraeducator multilingual learner, first reading.
Great, thank you. So this is a first read of the new job description, is agreed upon with our labor partners, and basically it's kind of getting a position for an individual to support at the secondary level students who are learning English, especially our newcomers, and help kind of be another service provider in the classroom to help support English acquisition, small group instruction, and support the teacher as needed.
Great. Do we have any questions about this item? Would anyone like to move to approve?
Can I just ask a quick?
Yes, please.
I'm just looking at the salary schedule for, we have several different paraeducator positions listed there that just sort of, how do they all, can you give me roughly how they all differ, or?
I'll do my best.
Yeah, I didn't forewarn you on this.
No, that's okay. No worries. And I'll do my best. I'll channel Franny. So basically, at different levels of paraeducators, certain paraeducators might require supporting students with special needs, and so we're toileting things to that extent. So there's a different level there. There's also, again, if you're bilingual and kind of supporting this position would be different. We have instructional assistants, and so they all serve kind of different purposes with different kind of qualifications depending on the student need. That's kind of a quick.
Is this hiring one person? Is this hiring several people in this position?
It's my understanding there would be several people kind of supporting some of our Title I funding as well. We can use some of our title monies with this.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'll move.
Thank you, trustee Gasson.
First reading.
Sorry, trustee Butler. I'm really sorry. First reading, this will come back on consent in August. So we have a first by trustee Butler, second by trustee Pickus. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you. Okay, we're coming to the last item on our regular agenda before our study session, and I just want to let anyone in the audience know that if you'd like to comment on the study session, if you've arrived before I made this announcement, if you visit at the table in the corner, they'll have you fill out a card, and then we'll make sure that we can hear your comments. Okay, so our last item, 13I, approval of the 24-25 provisional draft of partnership agreement for Head Start service with Community Action Marin. This is the first reading.
Great, thank you. And so staff is bringing forth this provisional agreement for a partnership with Community Action Marin to provide Head Start services for our qualifying transitional kindergarten students who would be dually enrolled in both Head Start and the Novato Unified School District. And so we've had a couple of meetings with our community Action Marin friends, trying to kind of figure out what this kind of partnership would look like and how we can support one another moving forward. And basically, this partnership will secure dual funding for qualifying students and will support both entities in leveraging resources and expertise to ensure our students are kinder ready in the following school year. And we're kind of in the negotiation process where we're talking about how do we work together and how do we collaborate and what expertise can you bring and how can we support you in that. And so the staff is kind of looking forward to working over the summer to really solidify what we need to do and complete. And we will bring a more thorough agreement to you come August if this is the direction that the board would like us to move forward and continue.
Okay, do we have questions? Okay, I see Trustee Lametta, then Trustee Gasson, and then Trustee Butler, and we do have one public comment.
Dr. Steiner, thank you for that clarification that you're still negotiating.
Yes.
Just to be clear, is that why there's no amount?
Yes.
Because we're still in conversation?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was partly, I mean,
Yeah,
and
where's the
I
numbers?
appreciate,
Yeah.
well, no, I appreciate that. And I was thinking, it said it was coming later. I thought, okay, but I didn't realize until when we come back, like in August. And so my follow-up question would be, and I should have prefaced this by, I think this is a wonderful idea. So I'm in favor of it. I think it's important. The other thing I just kind of circled and wasn't sure in terms of context was on the first page, item 4E. It has reports needing to be due by August 31st, and I didn't know if that was is that an enrollment report?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you're basing all these numbers, and that's when all
Yes.
the pieces will fit together, because you'll know how many kids are here, and, okay.
Correct. And we've currently identified about 36 students that would qualify. And looking forward to kind of working with our partners, really kind of with the concept of whole child, whole family, and really providing these wraparound services to our families.
Okay, thank you.
I'm excited about this. This is something that we never really thought of, and here we are with it. So I think it's a great partnership, and it's really serving the student. So I'm looking forward to the draft coming forward. That sort of gives us the scope of the work that's going to take place between the two entities and who's going to do what. So thank you for reaching out to them or whoever reached out to who to bring this together. So excited. And to have 36 students, that's quite a bit. So is this part of, would this be part of the community schools?
It could
kind of incorporated in that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially kind of we were trying to think of where we would potentially start the program too would be at Hamilton.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I
Right.
think we can
Okay.
definitely incorporate, again, our wraparound services for all.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to echo that. I think this is really exciting, and I know that one of the focuses for leadership in the district is more community partnership and how we can leverage resources around us. And so I think this is a really creative look at moving forward. So full support. I'm really excited to see how it plays out.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, can we please have our public speaker, Shauna Hewitt?
Are we moving to the next
Okay,
topic?
can we have you come to the microphone so that your comments are captured? And there's a timer over there that will be your 3 minutes so that you are prepared.
Yes, my name is Shana Hewitt. I am the VP of Early Education for Community Action Marin. Just a little bit about a Community Action Marin. We are an anti-racist, anti-poverty organization. We provide services, a safety net, housing justice, food justice, and economic justice services. In addition to that, our Children and Family Services Division. We hold the grant for Head Start for Marin County, and we're proposing this partnership, as Julie said, to provide wraparound comprehensive services to the children in TK who need it, and we'll basically make sure that they are kindergarten ready. So we're looking forward to this partnership to be able to benefit the children in Novato. As we said, there are possibly 36 children that we would dual enroll. Making it just profitable for everyone involved, and the partnership is something that we really value. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. Any other comments or questions? Okay, do we have anyone who'd like to move to approve this item? Trustee Pickus, and then I saw Trustee Lametta as a second. Great. It will come back at the August 6th meeting. And at that point, we'll have specific
Details, yep.
information on cost, et cetera, and the working relationship?
Correct.
Great.
Correct.
Okay, wonderful.
So that, right, that was just why I was wondering why we were approving it without the additional information now.
Just so we can continue to make sure that we're going to work on this partnership. If this wasn't a
Okay.
direction that we wanted to go, then we would have said no, thank you.
No, I understand that. So we're the concept, not the contract.
Yes, it's just a first reading, and we will have it back in August with a detailed
Okay,
contract.
just clarifying that. Thanks.
Great. Vote. All in favor? 7, none opposed. Thank you. Okay, we are now moving on to our study session. This is item 14A, Educator Workforce Housing Feasibility Study Session. We have Derek Nell, the Director of Staff Housing Development, here to present to start with.
Okay, good evening, and we're moving right along tonight. Good to see you guys. So I'm going to start out by introducing our consultants from Brookwood Partners, and you guys can come up now and we'll get ready to present together. I also want to introduce James Traber. He's our legal opinion on matters that have to do with the housing, and he's with F3 Law. So this is Chris White with Brookwood Partners, and this is Alan Katz with Brookwood as well. And what we're going to do is basically, I'll start out, kind of set it up, and then I'll turn it over to Chris, who will continue the presentation going forward. So to start, we're going to basically talk about what education workforce housing is, why education workforce housing is needed, who we are as a district and our employee demographics, and what we've done so far and where we are. And we'll talk a little bit about the development process timeline. And you're going to be going through the preliminary feasibility study that's provided by Brookwood, which will include the results of our employee survey. I'll talk about site analysis and entitlements and timing, and then we'll talk to the board about what's next. So what is education workforce housing? Education workforce housing helps school districts recruit and retain high caliber professionals in teaching and support roles. It enhances the quality of education in our community. It fosters a supportive culture focused on employee well-being. It maintains a motivated workforce, reduces staffing shortages, and lowers high turnover rates. It brings a sense of connection and belonging and ensures stability and continuity in our education here in town. Reduces the commute times and allows employees to live near the students they serve, fostering a stronger community bond. And finally, it attracts individuals from diverse backgrounds who might not have considered living here otherwise, which helps to enrich our community with diverse perspectives and promotes an inclusive environment. Just briefly, we're not alone. Some of you may recall we participate in the California School Board Association Education Workforce Housing Training Program. We're in the advanced program at this point, but there's a total of 23 districts statewide participating. A total of 49 districts statewide are in the process of researching workforce housing, and only 5 have been completed to date within the framework of the CSBA model. Over the decades, there has been workforce housing constructed in the state. This is just an example of the Daly City Jefferson High School Union. This would, you would consider this a fairly high density, large building that's probably an appropriate fit for Daly City. This is an example that's Casa del Maestro in Santa Clara School District. So it's the oldest workforce housing following the model that I'd mentioned earlier, and along the lines of examples, maybe the construction and the appearance might be more suitable for our community. And each of these slides have information about the breakdown of the units at each site, and we can go back to them later during our conversation. So why is education workforce housing needed? Well, in California, there's a growing trend that all of our employees are basically being priced out of the housing market. About 1 in 10 school districts have an annual turnover rate of 25% or more. Now, we are nowhere near that, but our numbers are ticking up. Over 40% of the school districts in the state report entry-level wages and salaries are below the 80% of the area median income, known as AMI, which helps set the eligibility requirements for affordable housing that's constructed with funds provided by tax credits and other governmental agencies. You're required to have a certain, tenants have to meet certain income requirements. The last item is about more teachers are entering the profession on emergency credentials. You guys approved an item a little bit earlier this afternoon about teachers that are just learning, or they maybe not necessarily have the credential that we're hiring them for. Report stated that 95% of our teachers are properly credentialed, but 5%, 100% would be better. I can remember a time when it was pretty rare, just 10, 15 years ago, that this district would have had itself in a situation where we had to hire teachers that weren't fully credentialed for the subject they were about to teach. Some other considerations. The state for a long time now has been aware of the lack of young people entering the education as a career, so they've developed a few incentive programs to get students to get credentialed and to learn about being a teacher, instructor, and administrator. Unfortunately, these grants were on the cut list of the budget that the governor had put forward back in May. As of yesterday, though, some of the news isn't so bad, because it sounds like, though it's not official yet, that these particular programs are going to remain, that they will be funded at a slightly lower dollar amount, but they're going to increase the eligibility requirements, which will have a negative impact, again, on the number of students going into education as a career. Locally, what this is showing us is that $3,400 is the average rent for apartments in Novato. So that covers studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. And it demonstrates that our average NUSD beginning teacher salary is just under $64,000 a year, which means that they would have to spend 64% of their income on rent, which makes it very difficult to live in our community or nearby for that matter. Much worse is the situation we have with our classified employees based on their average salary, annual wages, et cetera, comes in just around $44,500. That's 91% of their income if they're a single income household. So obviously a lot of our employees are doubling up or finding other ways to make that work, or they're living a great distance away. But it just has a negative impact on our ability to attract and retain employees. Okay, so who we are, just some demographics. The current average years of employment, this shows that obviously our younger people on average are currently within the last year are staying with us for a little over 2.5 years. But you can see gradually that in order to get that's the older employees that stay longer. The pie chart on the right shows basically 33% of our workforce is at, near, or past retirement age. And I actually have a chart on the left-hand side here that shows if we were to set retirement at age 68, 33% of all, we have 30% of all of our employees are within 10 years or past the retirement age, which is it's something that we need to be preparing for in advance. And then we look back over the last 10 years to get sort of an idea based on age what our turnover rate was. And as you can see, the younger they are, the less they stay. And one way to look at this is as a cultural society, and I mentioned the people going to education, but we're running out of old people. So we need to recruit young people to be the future of our teaching force. So what are we doing then to address the issue? This is, I know, a full slide, but there's a lot going on here. But we continue to participate in the California School Board Association training and support services. We've established a workforce housing advisory committee, and on the right-hand side, you can see the names of the participants and their positions in the community and the district. It's an official committee of the trustees, meaning they have to abide by Brown Act laws and publish minutes, et cetera, and conduct their meetings in public. They're advisory only. Any and all final decisions will be made by our board. In the process of developing workforce housing, it breaks down into 6 stages. It's a multi-year process, and where we are now is about the middle of a major milestone, which is the feasibility study of what can be built or developed on our properties. So what is a feasibility study? Well, it consists of the employee survey data that you're going to hear Brookwood talk to you about, employee demographics, which I've kind of covered with you. Brookwood's going to be doing a site analysis, which kind of covers things like zoning potential, environmental and geotechnical reports, conceptual design testing for the site, number of units and the mix of units, land valuations, development options, and the entitlement process, which is part of adding value to land, including our financial estimating, funding sources, construction costs, and finally operating costs. So what are the objectives of this study session? It's to receive input from the board on the preliminary study that we have so far. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what it's not about. It's really important to take this into consideration going forward, that you're going to be looking at conceptual fit plans. These are purely examples of possibilities for discussion purposes only. They are not official in any way or represent any final decisions. We're not going to be making we're not going to be choosing any properties for development tonight. We're going to make no decisions regarding the size or type of development to be built. And tonight's report won't have any financing or budgets. All those will be included in the final study that you will be accepting on August 6th. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our professionals, Chris White and Alex Katz from Brookwood Partners. And Chris.
Thanks, Derek. So I'm going to give the presentation this evening, and Alan's going to jump in with important information that I forget to mention. But I just want to say we're thrilled to be working with you all. We think you have a really great portfolio, some great opportunities for housing, and we're excited to keep moving through this process. And we've presented to the board before, but for any community members that are sort of tuning in for the first time, we'll just give a really brief introduction to us and our experience and qualifications. We are the principals of Brookwood Partners. We focus exclusively on working with public school districts in California on their underutilized land and surplus properties. And that takes different forms. It could be entitling and developing properties to their highest and best use to generate sale revenue or a long-term revenue stream for the district. Or it involves building workforce housing at discounted rents to attract and retain teachers and staff. So the Daly City project that Derek mentioned earlier was our project with Jefferson Union High School District. We took it all the way through the entitlement process through completion. And we're currently working with several other districts around the state. A couple examples here, our Pacifica School District was approved for 70 units last year. We're currently working with Cabrillo and Half Moon Bay for 60 units of housing, and we submitted a pre-application on that last year. So we've done a lot of work, and there's a lot of content to get through tonight, so I'm going to move at a relatively quick pace, but I'm going to be able to come back to elaborate and for clarifications at the end as we see fit. But I'll talk a little bit about the feasibility study schedule now. We've kicked off in March and started looking at all the due diligence and existing studies and started looking at title reports and environmental analysis, et cetera. One of the key things we did was the employee survey. So we have a kind of a high level summary of the results of that we'll present next. And then we started looking at a few of the sites. There's 6 sites that we're going to talk about today. We'll do a site analysis, and we've come up with a few of the fit plans that Derek described. So we're really interested in hearing questions and feedback in some direction so that we know where to focus our efforts over the course of the next month or so that when we come back in August, we'll make sure that we're meeting all of your needs. We've been meeting with the Housing Advisory Committee in April and May, and then we'll meet with them again in September, and then we hope to come back after all this is done with next steps on moving forward with a housing project. I have about 4 slides now. I'm going to talk about some of the summary of the employee survey. So there was a survey done about 6 years ago in 2018. We had about a 57% response rate to that survey and 39% this time. So a little bit less, but still significantly, statistically significant. The really interesting thing for me is that despite all the things that have changed since 2018, COVID has happened, there's been a lot of moving. Folks have continued to get moved towards retirement age, interest rates have gone up, et cetera, but the interest in living in employee housing by your employees has stayed remarkably stable. It's been exactly 56% interest in both the 2018 and the 24 survey. So we'll see in one of the next slides, there's a lot of support from the employees for what we're talking about here tonight. This on the left asked the employees, how important do you think it is for the district to explore ways to attract and retain employees? 96% think it's either important or very important, so the overwhelming majority see this as an issue and think the district should be being proactive about it. And on the right, this is an interesting question. It's knowing that funds that would be used for housing can't be used to pay salaries, would you be supportive of workforce housing even if you don't think you're going to live there, if you don't have interest in living there? So 95% said either yes or maybe to that question. So again, overwhelming support, almost unanimous support from people thinking that it's important to find ways to attract or retain, and that workforce housing is something that they support. We wanted to know, among the folks who are interested in working in living in employee housing, what are your top reasons for being interested? What are your top priorities out of a workforce housing project? And so the top 2, perhaps not surprisingly, are lower housing costs and living closer to work. So those are precisely the type of things that a workforce housing project like we're discussing today would deliver for them. And on the right, roughly half of all respondents said they have considered leaving their job due to the high cost of housing, and 54% have said that if they were offered workforce housing they could afford, that would influence their decision to stay with the district. So again, just emphasizing that this is clearly an important problem, and workforce housing seems to be something that could make a difference to these folks. This is the last slide that I have summarizing the employee survey results. On the left is an income distribution, looking at a little bit more fine grain about the people who are interested in living in workforce housing. It's a bell curve from very low all the way up to moderate income and above, but we can see the majority of the folks are kind of in this low and moderate income range. And then we sliced even further and looked at classified folks that are in orange. They're more heavily weighted towards the lower income distribution of the curve, and certificated are on the higher income distribution of the curve. But again, these are all folks that have expressed some level of interest in living in workforce housing. This chart on the right is really interesting for me. It's emphasizing that it's the younger employees that you have who are most at risk of turnover due to the high cost of housing. The 18 to 34 and 35 to 44 bracket have given overwhelmingly responded yes to the questions of, if low-cost housing were made available to you, would that influence your decision to continue employment with the district? And also, have you considered leaving your job at the district due to the cost of housing? So, coupled with some of the demographic data that Derek described earlier, of a third of your employees are at or approaching retirement age. Presumably, as you attract the next cohort of employees to fill in for those folks as they retire in the coming years, they they might be on the younger end of the spectrum, and they're likely to share similar concerns about the cost of housing. So we think there's a lot of demand in your employee for this type of housing, and it's likely to increase or not decrease over the next few years. In this slide, we're thinking about synthesizing that information into a recommendation for what type of demand there may be for workforce housing amongst your employees. So, one data point to triangulate against is the Jefferson Union High School District project that Derek showed the picture of earlier. In that project, we built 122 units, which is about 25% of their eligible workforce. And applying that same statistic to your 855 employees, that would be around a little over 200 would be the demand based on that calculation. 188 responded and expressed some level of interest in workforce housing. Not everyone responded to that survey, so it's possible there are folks who are interested who didn't respond and aren't included in that number. And then finally, as I just described, quite possible that over the coming years, as older folks retire, that there will be even more demand. So we're bringing all that together. We're recommending that 190 to 220 units feels about right in terms of demand for workforce housing for your employees. All right, I'm going to now transition into another part of the presentation where we start to look at the actual properties that you own and give some site analysis. This is a recommendation of what to be looking for and considering. Again, this is the first time we're presenting this to you all, so haven't been any decisions made around this. We're interested in your feedback about the site location. Are these good sites to develop into housing? Some perks of a good housing site are walkability, is something respectful of the neighborhood context and have proximity to amenities and transit. And then the building concepts are something we're really interested in your feedback tonight on. Density, that's units per acre. Building heights, is 3-story appropriate for a certain site? Is 4-story appropriate? We're interested in your feedback because you know your community really, really well. The conceptual site layouts, parking is always really important. There are different ways to get more parking on a site, but it gets much more expensive as you explore different ways to get more parking on the same size site. And then finally, the building typology of multifamily, which is really just another word for apartments, flats, and then townhomes, attached, detached, et cetera. A couple just quick notes here. Really, the site layouts themselves are conceptual in nature, so we can and will accommodate the appropriate indoor and outdoor amenities for the people living there. So that's always something that can be tweaked later. We probably don't need to get into the details of the exact type of amenities being offered. That's something that can come later. And then finally, just a quick note on for sale versus for rent. I'd say technically any of these proposed, the layouts that we're discussing today could be for sale or for rent product. What we've seen from other districts that we've worked with is that they like the for rent model because it's sort of a renewable resource to attract and retain employees over time as opposed to selling, but no decisions have been made on that topic. Okay, we're getting into 6 properties that we took a closer look at. The blue dots on the map here are your school facilities. So between the yellow and the blue, it represents all of the sites that you own. And we took a look at these 6. The San Andreas property, the district office where we are here today, the fans and transportation site, both of those are in nice walkable downtown locations. Hill Education is a little bit south of that. And then finally, down in South Novato are the Hamilton and Meadow Annex sites, which Meadow Annex is adjacent to the Hamilton School. So the way I'm going to go through these 6 properties is start with a site summary slide like the one you see here. This is where I'll just, it has the size of the site, the zoning designations, some advantages and challenges of site planning for each of these. And then after that, I'll show you anywhere from 1 to 3 conceptual fit plans. And, again, at the end of this, I'll be interested in sort of your questions and preferences amongst those. So the Meadow Annex site, you can see just on the top part of the screen, that's the Hamilton School. We've broken this out into 2 areas. The Community Action Marin site is on the southern side, looking at Head Start programs in portable classrooms. And then there's another part just north of it that's doesn't have a whole lot of, it's not being used very intensely at the moment. We're calling it underutilized land. The site has some advantages. There's, I don't know if you can see the white arrows, those are existing side access. There's sort of in the northeast corner, and to the west, there's 2 existing side access points. And this has really great access to some recreation trails. On the right-hand side, there's a yellow trail, and on the left-hand side, there's a blue, where you can walk or ride your bike to bus lines and the Smart Rail stop. That's just north. A challenge of the site, of course, is relocating existing use and programs on the site. So this site, we think could be a good site conducive to higher density and higher building heights due to its proximity to the freeway access, and it's not really close in with a single-family home neighborhood. This is the first, it's the lowest density. It's 62 apartment units in a 3-story building. That's the yellow block. You can see it running north-south, and then surface parking at a ratio of 1.75 spaces per unit. This, like all of the multifamily projects that we'll discuss today, we would propose being a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units, which we can fine-tune the exact mix, based on survey results and your preferences. But this is the least expensive option because the surface parking is relatively inexpensive, and it also produces the lowest unit count of 62. Moving up the density scale, this is a 4-story scheme. It shifts the building from the east side of the site to the west side as it gets taller to be closer to the freeway and further away from neighboring households. This project introduces the notion of a car barn. So a car barn is a way to get more parking on the site that's needed as the density increases. And it's sort of a 2 to 3-story structure that sits on the ground, and you drive your car in and get out, and the mechanical lift system sort of shuffles your car away and parks it for you, and then you can later recall it. It's actually the solution that a lot of developers are using to build multifamily housing, and it's a solution that we're using with the Jefferson Union High School District project in Daly City. So that's a combination of car barn and surface parking, just like is proposed here. And then finally, this is as tall as we are suggesting for any of the sites throughout Novato today. This is a 5-story apartment building. In the real estate industry, it's known as a 4/1, which means the 1 is a concrete podium at the bottom. That's the footprint of the yellow, and then also the dark green that you see there is 1 story of concrete where all of the parking is included. What's nice about that is you can have a courtyard on top of that where the units can look into, and you can have hardscape and softscape and nice outdoor amenity space. And then 4 floors of residential above that. This is the most expensive because that concrete podium is quite expensive to do, but it yields 130 apartment units, so more than double the 3-story scheme. Moving on to the Hill Education Center site. Talk a little bit about the existing uses here. We drew in blue and red the outline of the existing building. It's my understanding that the red building has a higher utilization of educational uses currently, and the blue area has a lower utilization. So one of the schemes you'll see shows us moving some of the educational uses that are in the red area into the blue area, and then demolishing the red. And then that's important because it opens up the middle of the site to be connected with the southern end of the site at the corner, which opens up a lot more opportunities for site planning for housing. Or if the existing programs can be relocated, then it could clear up the entire site for housing development. Again, the white arrows are access points. And another interesting aspect of this project is on the bottom left corner, the orange arrow. That intersection there has a higher grade, so the land is higher up than the parking lot inside of the site. So if you we're proposing a 3-story apartment there, but it actually appears lower from the street because of that grade difference. And then across the street, in the corner on the left-hand bottom side of the screen are some apartments, and then down on the bottom part of the screen are some professional and commercial spaces. So we think that intersection is probably an appropriate place for a little bit higher building heights and a higher density, as opposed to on the north part of the site, we have single-family homes that are single-story with backyards butting up to the edge of the property. So you'll see we've proposed lower density housing there. This is the scenario I described where we relocate some of the existing educational uses into the northern half of the building, and then that frees up the middle of the site for housing. Again, it's a 3-story apartment building, kind of focused on the corner and all surface parked. And another great thing about this site is it could be phased. This could be the first phase out of 2, and then this could be the second phase, or this could be just all one phase done at once. It's a similar 3-story apartment building on the corner, and then on the north part of the site are 2-story attached townhomes with tuck-under parking garages. So again, that's being respectful to the single-family home neighbors just to the north of the site, and focusing more of the building height and density to the corner where you have more commercial properties across the street. And this yields about 100 units between the apartments and the townhomes. I think it's nice to have the potential to offer to your employees, townhomes, which could be 3 or 4 bedrooms for folks that might have a family and need more space, and other folks that might be more price sensitive and want to live in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. So to offer that mix could be a benefit. Moving on to the Hamilton site. On the map on the right, there are a lot of things going on, and if you'd like me to, I can come back later and clarify more of these components here. But I think what we might want to focus on are the green areas in the middle. They're labeled vacant land. There's 3 areas. And when we add those up, it's about 9 acres. They're currently, underutilized. There's a new maintenance yard in blue at the top of the screen. So part of what we would suggest is moving the driveway access to the maintenance yard, which is shown from left to right in the yellow arrow towards the top, relocating that to the blue arrow on the top left, to free up some of that space and connect some of those vacant lands to have a more cohesive housing project. A couple of the challenges of this site are that there are some environmental concerns. This was a former Air Force base, and there were some soil cleanups that happened. We don't think most of that would affect any housing project, but there's a gray box on the left side of the green. That is an area that we'd need to stay away from housing. It could be open space or parking, but it couldn't be housing due to soil concerns. And then the last thing here is a federal use restriction. When the site was handed over to the school district, it needs to be for educational use. And preliminarily, we believe that workforce housing for your employees could be considered an educational use and be consistent with that, but we would need to firm that up as a later part of the process. So we have 2 examples of housing projects here. there are not a lot of neighboring housing for this site, except along the west side of the site. So there's some lower density housing. So being respectful to them and putting surface parking and open space, and then stepping up to 3-story apartments in the middle, those 2 U-shaped buildings, and then using the corner closer to the smart rail side on the right. There's another 3-story building here, and that yields about 160 units of housing. If that, based on your feedback today, if you thought this could be a good opportunity to push building heights and density a little bit further on this one, on the right-hand side of the page, closer to the smart rail side and further away from other housing in the neighborhood, we've shown what a 5-story apartment building there could look like. And that would require using a car barn. That's the dark gray box just south of the 5-story. This would also require coordinating with the South Novato Library, which is located just south of the car barn. And it's my understanding that they're interested in putting a permanent library on the site. And so it would require coordinating with them to slightly reconfigure the layout of the library to accommodate this. This is the 4th site. It's the San Andreas site. It's located in a single-family home neighborhood. It's a large, 26 acres in total. That includes about 22 acres owned by the school district that is outlined in the red dash line, and also about 4 acres in the orange, yellowish, red dash line that is owned by the city. And so, it's my understanding that the city has expressed interest in the past in sort of joining forces on this. So we've assumed that that can be coordinated with the city. There's at this point, there's only one real access point. It's the white arrow to the top right of the screen. On the left-hand side, the white arrow is a new access point that we would suggest. A couple other aspects of this site are that in the top left corner, outside of the area owned by the district or the city, there was, at one point many decades ago, a gas station that had some soil cleanups, and we've reviewed the environmental documents. We don't believe that would impact housing at this site, so that seems to be okay. There are also the blue arrows on the bottom part of the site, accessing the open space from the cul-de-sacs of the existing neighborhood. And, folks from the neighborhood like to walk through the site, walk their dogs. And they have access through there. We would suggest that, assuming the neighborhood wants this, that any housing project continue to keep those access points and have walking trails for dog walking and whatnot through the site, even as a new housing project is proposed. And then the last thing I want to mention is there have been some environmental review studies done on this site, and they've revealed some environmentally sensitive areas, which you'll see in the proposed housing projects. We've just steered clear of those areas for now, and additional study that may be needed to study that a little bit further could extend the approval and entitlement timeline a little bit longer than some of the other sites. So we have two potential housing projects. It's a large site. There's a lot of different opportunities and options here, but the hatched area are the environmentally sensitive areas that we're just staying away from at this point. We've got a mix of different types of housing. On the left-hand side, right across the street from some of the existing single-family homes, we're suggesting 2-story, relatively low-density housing. It could be duplexes or triplexes or what's currently being shown. In the interior of the site, we have 2-story attached townhomes sprinkled throughout. And then right in the middle, running east-west, is a series of 3-story apartment buildings with surface parking to the north. So we think that they're stepped back enough from the neighbors in the community to justify a 2- and 3-story building heights throughout this site. This is a lower density scheme. The previous scheme has about 200 units total when you add up all of the different building types. This one has about half that, at about 100 units. It's very similar in a lot of ways. The real main difference is in the middle, showing a dark green park and some single-family home lots. Single-family home lots could, given some of the zoning changes that have happened at the state level, could be 1, 2, 3 unit buildings. But in general, what we found working with school districts on their land is that the economics of building on single-family home lots, the construction costs and the value of the lot to do that is tough to make it work for employees for your district. So the most likely thing for this would be to design and entitle a site like this, take that big group of single-family home lots and sell them off to a home builder, and then reinvest the proceeds from that sale into the workforce housing project. So we're down to the last 2 properties. This is the district office site where we're sitting now. We took a look at what's like a high density, higher building height project that could be built here to replace the district office. It's a great walkable location to downtown Novato. It's a great corner. Relocating the existing programs would be the biggest challenge here. The cost of building new office building to house the district office will be quite expensive. But we took a look at a 5-story multifamily project here. It's just shy of 100 units. This is again a 4/1. That means 1 floor of concrete podium where the parking happens, and then 4 stories of residential above that. It's tough to get the parking on a smaller site for 94 units. So due to its walkable location to downtown Novato, we've dropped the parking ratio slightly from 1.75 to 1.5. And we've assumed that we could absorb a sliver of the city's recreation area just to the left there for some additional surface parking. But that would, of course, need to be coordinated with the city. So that could yield 94 multifamily units. Finally, the last site here is the transportation site in downtown Novato. It's just south of Olive and west of the Smart Rail tracks. This one has some bus fleet and repairs and maintenance and sort of back of house operations of the district house here. So relocating those would be necessary. The real constraint here is access. It's sort of landlocked between this narrow alley just to the south, what really is only wide enough for 1 car. And then the blue area is an access point, but it's sort of driveways going past other warehouse areas. So, for that purpose, for that reason, we're at this point not recommending pursuing housing on this site. So I don't have a proposed housing project to show you on this site. So I've gone through all 6 sites. I just have, I think, 2 or 3 more slides here, and then we'll open it up. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the funding options and strategies. This is really just meant to convey that the decisions and the discussions that we'll have here today on the left, who we would want to rent to, what their target income levels and rental rates would be, things that drive construction costs, as I've talked about, parking, et cetera, drive construction costs a lot, and then feedback and needs from the community, all could impact the potential funding sources. So there could be a combination of funding sources, but here are just some examples. Since you have at least 4 properties that could be good candidates for housing, we could entitle those, create value, sell them, and then reinvest the proceeds into a workforce housing project. So that's great that you have several properties that could be good candidates here. A quick note on entitlements, selling properties as is instead of designing and going through the approval process for entitlements. Selling them as is really decreases the amount of value that you would get from that sale. And I would also note just that interest rates are high, inflation has been high, and so it's probably wouldn't be a great time to get the maximum value out of an as-is land sale at this moment, but perhaps a couple years down the road after the entitlements are done. And then looking at local funds, general obligation bonds can be a huge help. It's how Jefferson Union High School District was able to build that beautiful apartment building there with GO bonds and certificates of participation, which are really loans that school districts can take out. Parcel taxes, of course, require a vote of the voters. State and federal funds, grants, soft loans, which are loans that can be forgiven and don't have to be repaid, are of course very helpful. Tax credits can be helpful. They're competitive to get, and they come with restrictions, most notably the income levels of the folks who can live in the building associated with those. They're typically lower than what teachers often make at various school districts. And then finally, public-private partnerships could share in capital costs. I'll describe a little bit about the entitlement process. The conceptual designs that we're presenting today we would have to push the design much further than it is currently. There's all sort of planning documentations, including civil drawings, tentative maps, potentially an affordable housing agreement with the city, perhaps a development agreement. There's lots of things that need to be satisfied by the planning department. It's ultimately reviewed by the city of Novato, not the state architect. Community engagement is just an absolutely critical part of any project. Giving folks an opportunity to ask questions, give feedback, and taking that into consideration is always really important. Environmental review is always a really important aspect of entitlements as well. So CEQA is what governs. It would do an evaluation to see if a full environmental impact report would be necessary. And then ultimately, the EIR, if needed, would be certified, and then it would go for a vote in front of the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council of Novato. A typical timeline for entitlements is 2 or a little more than 2 years. Finally, on the right here, a couple of different strategies that could be used, and these, of course, could be used in combinations with each other, but this is sort of some of the things we're interested in your feedback on and direction. Strategy 1 could be trying to maximize land value by engaging and working with the community to entitle the properties to create value, and then selling some of them, reinvesting in the project. Part of this requires some upfront costs for the design and environmental review, et cetera, to go through that entitlement process. Strategy 2 would be to minimize those upfront costs and instead sell properties as is. The downside, of course, is the low land value that I discussed earlier. And then finally, strategy 3 would be seeking a general obligation bond, which needs 55% support from voters. This could be a way to really maximize the amount of housing to meet that 200 units of demand that we talked about earlier in the presentation. And it could leave you with some housing opportunities that could be used for long-term revenue generation for your district fund, but it requires a general obligation bond. And then finally, at the bottom, low-income housing tax credits may be an opportunity to layer on top and have the district's funds extend even further, but as I mentioned, they come with certain restrictions. And this is the last slide. It's just next steps. We're very interested in hearing your thoughts and directions so that as we go back and continue our work and our analysis and come back to you, we know it's reflecting your desires. We're looking closer at the construction costs and the various financing strategies. We'll be back August 6th. We're meeting again with the advisory committee in September, and then we hope to come back again after that to move forward with the project. So with that, I will hand it back over to Derek, and thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
So I'm prepared to sit down with my notepad and take notes and listen to you guys. And I'll just put Chris and Alan up here to take the heat. So no, I'm just kidding, of course. But obviously, ask questions away and give us some feedback on your thoughts about these sites and the kinds of projects that we're considering there.
My plan is we're going to take comments, questions from the board, then we will take public comment, then we'll come back to the board and we'll have some summation of what we'd like them to bring back in August. Does that sound good? Okay. We do have 9 public comments, which if they all take their 3 minutes would take us over the 20-minute per item cap. Are we comfortable to extend that? I see lots of shaking. Okay, yes. So we will hear all comments that are here right now. Comments, questions from the board? Trustee Mack?
First, just a couple of maybe informational requests for the next time around that would help. They're on slide 46, just one back, talking about the different strategies, right? Maximizing land value versus minimize, go with the minimum, just sell as is. What would be helpful is if it would be possible for each of the 6 properties to provide estimates of the land value in both those scenarios, just so we can understand what we got. So, fully entitled, whatever that might be different for different properties, right? But leave it to you guys to judge. And then the as is, we just put it up for sale and get what we get. That'll help us to understand, right, what we have relative to go bonds and all that kind of stuff as a funding strategy. Number 2, there is a number of properties that have relocation challenges. And what would be helpful is, and I don't know if you're prepared to do it, maybe Derek, this is more for you, maybe it's more for us, but really maybe an initial, perhaps list of ideas on how that might work, where they might go, talk to the involved parties perhaps to see what they think.
Can I tell you? Every renter utilizer of a property that we have discussed today has been reached out to ahead of tonight so that they knew that that was coming, just so everyone knows.
Okay. But what would be helpful is for us to kind of memorialize that as all part of this as we go forward, as part of the decision-making process.
Appreciate that, Trustee Mack. That definitely will be a part of the analysis that we come back with. But for tonight, we kind of want you to think about these sites as those problems will be solved. All the money problems solved, the relocation solved.
I'm just saying down the road, next step at some point.
Absolutely, I've got that, and that'll be part of it.
And then a question for the Brookwood guys. I know that Jefferson Union sold out quickly, right? And in fact, does it still have a waiting list?
Yeah, it's a rental project, so it didn't sell out, but it rented up really quickly.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant.
And it has a wait list. And anecdotally, they started their school year with 0 open positions, and the first time as anyone can
Beautiful,
remember.
right? So my question, though, is that 122 units of whatever it was worked out to 25%. I get what you're doing with the math, and I agree with it. But the only thing I would maybe challenge on is what if if the capacity of the project was big enough to handle that wait list, what would it have been? And then calculate that ratio on our 855. So instead of 25%, is it really more 35%? That's where I'm going. Because I'm trying to get a sense for how many units do we really need to do, because that's going to guide us in how we structure what we're going to build.
Yeah. Should I respond to that?
Oh, please, yeah.
I think it's a really good point. Early on, the survey results were indicating actually a smaller project for Jefferson Union, and they decided to make it quite a bit bigger than the data they were seeing, so that with the thought that they could grow into it over a course of a number of years. And they can, if they didn't fill it with their own employees, they could rent it to employees of the city, other public officials or other school districts nearby, for example, as they sort of grow into the building. But the project, again, leased up right away and has a wait list, so it turned out that they could have gone even larger. So yeah, and I think I understand the math, and we can take a look at that for next time.
Yeah, just get. I suspect the 25% is too low for our 855, and.
Well, I was going to say it's interesting. So it's a very interesting question, as you're all saying, because currently there's a wait list of 15, but how large would that wait list be
if they knew there was additional housing kind of, waiting for them. So I think it's an interesting challenge to come up with that number, but we're close enough with JUHSD. I think we could work with them to try to come up with a number.
Perfect. Thank you. And then 2 more and I'll be done. Sorry, I'm taking a while here. Parking requirements. Now, my understanding with the new laws, all these buildings are being built with no parking requirements. Does that apply to us? What are our parking requirements? Are they self-imposed?
Yeah, we always like to think first about what do we think is the real demand for parking, because we wouldn't, it wouldn't be fair to the employees living in these homes or the neighbors, if there were what kind of parking spilling out into the surrounding neighborhood because you didn't build enough. That said, there's an argument that parking ratios could be lower in a workforce housing project with the school district because you're potentially living within walking or biking or transit distance of your place of employment of some of the schools. So if, actually our Half Moon Bay project is that way. It's within walking or biking distance of 3/4 of the jobs of the district, because right in the center of walkable downtown Half Moon Bay. So depending on which site is selected, that could be an argument for dropping the parking ratio even lower. But we always like to be conservative during this conceptual fit plan process, because you can always, if we found evidence that we could decrease the parking ratio further as you get further into it, that's upside.
But am I correct to say they're pretty much self-imposed at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
There are.
Well, we want to do what's right for the community in the end, but.
Exactly. There are ways that, a lot of the state level housing legislation that's been passed that can be utilized to lower or waive completely parking minimums.
Right. Okay. And last question, slide 40, the San Andreas property. So I grew up there. I was there when it was first just an open piece of land. There were no wetlands there. Actually, go back.
Sorry.
40, sorry. In fact, those open areas, those wet areas, are the result of the San Marin builders deciding not to build drain pipes. So you have a drain pipe coming from the old Texaco station and opening up into the land and then picking up again down there. And I'm not sure what court that is. So my point is, I am very reluctant to call that a wetland and instead call that a man-made, it is what it is. So it gives us, in my mind, more property to work with, or the next builder if we sell it. So anyway, I'm just making the point, not really a question. So thanks. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. A couple of points. In the 90s, we sold off San Carlos property, which you've never seen because it is gone. And it was like 3 acres, and we needed the cash desperately. And I think we netted $3 million with no entitlements on the property. It was a fire sale on our part, and we had no choice, and it was a terrible decision. We probably could have gotten double the amount of revenue if we had another couple of years. To put the improvements across, which a developer did, and then built some very nice houses. So sell as is, to me, is an interesting number, but it's throwing away district assets that we for years have worked to have available. So I would today say that is not something I would support in any way at all. The other thing I would like to note is your numbers suggest that we have a working model of about 200 units that we could lease or rent, more or less, for the whole district. That was your requirement. Am I right about that? Is that the right number?
Yeah, that was our estimate of demand.
Yeah, okay, so estimate of demand. Right. And then we went through the sites and we saw closer to 600 possible units to build. So the notion that we would have to build all of this at one time is not a requirement. This could be done we could find 200 units on one of these sites and do that, and then 10 years from now do something more and something else. There's a project in Novato called Novato that Rotary built, and they did it in 3 stages. I believe it's 3. And they built one, the revenue for that funded the second, the revenue from the 2 funded the third, and it's a reduced, they own the property, they lease them out to tenants at reduced rates for elder population, and it self-funds, and but they didn't do it all at one time. They waited for time to pass to allow it to. So we have that possibility. The way I see your numbers, you're saying you can build 600 units, you need 200. It gives us the possibility of thinking of this as a long-term. We don't need it. We could decide on the plan now, but maybe implement it over a decade or 2 decades. And the final thing I would like.
Respond to that?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry, I'm just sort of talking away. Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, I think in theory there's no way you can do that, but just perhaps a note on the economics of housing development are such that to build, construction costs are quite high, and so to build brand new housing and then offer it at a steep enough discount to market rents, that would be a meaningful benefit to your employees. Mm-hmm. Even with sort of like free land that you already own free and clear, it still requires some sort of subsidy from somewhere for the basic math of that to work out. So in your example, if you had, a rich uncle or a general obligation bond or something that didn't have to be repaid, that could work. If we're trying to sort of bootstrap different things, if we could entitle 1 or 2 or 3 sites and sell them and take the proceeds from that and use it as the subsidy.
So that's the rich uncle. The rich uncle is you take one site, entitle it, sell it off to some developer and take that proceed. There's your rich uncle plus the free property. So what you're describing is a financial model that I haven't seen in here. Right. I saw a bunch of property, but I didn't see the financial model, which is the part that I really care about. And I was hoping that we would get to sooner than later. So we're going pretty quick, so I'm not disappointed at the rate, but it's the financial model that makes this all viable or not viable. And just what you're telling me tonight is just having free land is not enough.
Right.
That's what you just said.
Right.
And free land is not enough. We have to find some other fund mechanism to bring this into the model that either Pacifica or Bailey City or San Francisco State, I think, has a similar model where my understanding is it's renewable in their world. If you're a teacher, you get to live in the unit for 5 or 10 years and then have to move out. The rent you saved should have gone in your pocket so you can buy a house, so the next generation of teachers can take advantage. But I didn't hear you describe that long-term financial strategy model, and I'm interested in that. I'm less interested in the physical plant build, which is important, as I am in the financial model and in how it renews itself model. So I would love to hear about that.
I think we're gonna put those
time.
as some of our things to come back with.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what
great.
this is. This is what I would like to see coming forward, not what I think they did wrong tonight.
Great.
Yeah, that's exactly the notion.
We're sort of previewing that here on slide 47 with these strategies, sort of introducing some of the concepts that could be used.
My last note was business model, and I think that's what I just described. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Gasson?
Thank you for your presentation, and I feel lucky because I've seen some of this attending the other workforce housing meetings, so I feel like I'm a little bit different place than I'm hearing so far, and what I'm hoping maybe to help with is trimming stuff down just a little bit. For me, one of the things that came up was about selling units or rentals. I'm definitely on the side of renting. I want things that we can offer to our employees going forward. So I feel like that's a fundamental question that was sort of in there, that I'm in support of doing that rather than building units just for short-term, a sale and then the opportunity is gone. The other thing is, I actually had parking on my list is to make sure, and I'm probably fazed by the fact that we have a development going in just off of Grant that has 0 parking. And I'm very sensitive to that for our community. I don't want to, and also for the people that occupy. And ironically, one of the priorities on one of your lists of what people were looking for was parking. And so I would not be in favor of decreasing even the 1.75, realizing that, you know, it's possible a household has at least 2 people driving. And depending on where we end up, you know, there's one site in particular that would be dreadful if there wasn't sufficient parking. I think we'd create more of a issue for our employees who are in those buildings, but also our community. So that was another thing that I thought I would mention. And then in terms of the properties you presented, it was all super interesting. And again, maybe I'm a little bit more ahead, but I feel like there's a couple that I'm not even interested in pursuing in terms of the district office, not interested in the logistics of trying to do that for such a, you know, small amount, and then potentially having to impede on the park and all. It just, to me, just doesn't seem too feasible. And then the location of Hill, that's another one that I personally am not interested in. I'm not suggesting that we take that, but I think there's an additional apartment complex at the end of that street, and I actually drive that way every day. And I know the congestion and everything that's there. I think adding apartments, regardless of how well our intent, is just going to create a challenge for that area. And there's not really, I like the ones that are closer to transportation, you know, the train downtown, you know, it's marginal at Hill, but I'm not a favor of pursuing that one personally. The other thing I wanted to mention was, and kind of going to Trustee Miller's thing, I'm always about money. Like at one of our meetings, I was like, okay, how do we afford this? How do we do this? Because if I can't get to that point, I can't figure out what it is I want to do. I like the different scenarios and things or opportunities that we have, and I would like to look at them from like a staggered place. And what I mean by that is that there's a couple of options in here that could be like a first phase, or we could do a piece of it, and that we could maybe look at funding that through a bond. I know one of our bonds that we currently have, I think, oh, you are here, expires in a couple of years, so it'll be rolling off of our tax bills, and so I think there may be an opportunity for that. And then I envision the San Andreas property. I'm curious to know the cost of getting that set up, entitlement to sell that, and then using those funds to fund a second phase, you know, kind of that. I don't know if that's enough money, but that's kind of where I'm thinking right now, is picking a site that we could do that's manageable, that meets some of our needs. We get going on that. None of them, except for one, I think actually meets that 200 unit threshold. So I forget, I think it's Hamilton 1A and 1B. So, yeah, so, San Andreas, is it? I just kind of took that out. I think that there's a lot of, I was a part of the group that was working on that originally when I started on the board, and I think there's just a lot of things there that I don't see that for our housing development personally. So I don't know if San Andreas, yeah. So I think that is it. I don't know if any of that helps, but it would be my opinion that we trim down some of the choices if we can, so that you're not doing all the, you know, extra work on each scenario. But if we don't get there as a group, then I understand that too.
Trustee Butler, were you next?
Great. I didn't raise my hand, but yeah, sure. I just went. Thank you very much. I think we're much further along this time in this process than we ever have been in all the times we've tried to do this. So kudos to this group. Thank you. I'm going to kind of keep it at more of a higher level. I'm not going to get too much into the details. I like the approach you're taking. The sites that you've picked are what we need to pick, what you have on the plate. I'd like to still leave them all as options. I think we're still not far enough to really say eliminate something. Agree that fans and transportation should be not a choice, obviously. It's in a little bit of a donut hole there. I'm interested, as everybody else, in the financial piece. I'm interested in the entitlements. I don't want to sell anything as is. I would do the entitlement process first so we can get the best bang for our buck. I'm open to a developer developing part of the land if we have to, and using that money to do the process that we want to do the site that we want to do. So I am going to keep it more at a higher level just as it is. I think that's enough for right now to be able to keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Trustee Pickus?
I second those thoughts. I also am kind of more inclined to what you were saying, Greg, around looking at higher numbers. I think that the need will continue to grow, and so I'm more interested in the properties that have more housing available, while balancing that with a number of factors. Obviously, we're not looking for 7-story high-rises in our city. And I appreciated that in some of the models, when the housing property was right next to neighborhoods, you took into account how these might be townhouses right next to other single-family homes so that it's not next to a 3-story building. I think that's a really thoughtful choice around how we lay out those properties. So I thought that was great. Would love to see that continue. On slide 4, the "We Are Not Alone" slide, it talks about lots of other districts are looking at this, and it says only 5 projects have been completed to date. Could you talk a little bit about what we might have learned, why so few projects have actually come to fruition, and what are the takeaways from those projects that we could be considering at this point in our project?
So those sites are basically being tracked through California School Board Association and their program to advance education workforce housing. So it's not those 5. There are other housing developments that have been done in conjunction with developers or shared efforts outside of this particular program over the decades. I'll throw out a number of about 9 that I've located statewide going back 25 years. So, So you're asking why it's not happening, and I would say currently I would probably point to interest rates and some supply issues forcing the cost of concrete and other materials up high. But it's quite a wide spectrum, and in some places their bond failed, for example. Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons I could probably put together. I've got a matrix on that if I could share with you.
Can I add to that, Derek? I think that at the state level, the housing crisis in California is being taken seriously, and they're passing a lot of new legislation, including some legislation specific to school districts just in the last few years that have really clarified that this is an option that school districts can pursue. It was perhaps a little bit more ambiguous before that, and they're helping to streamline the process. So, our experience is that many districts all over the state are interested and in beginning steps of pursuing this. So I think you're going to see a lot more of it.
Yeah, and I didn't want to dampen it down. I would agree with that. I think that the future is optimistic with education workforce housing becoming more viable.
Then I would just add, the comment about passing a bond, I think would be a really important note for us, right? In terms of if we want to go out for a bond for this, making sure that our communication and collaborating with the community is really important to make sure that we have the community support moving forward with these projects.
Can I make one point? Mm-hmm. A simple additional point, Derek, the Hamilton project ended up with between 10 and 100 teacher housing projects. There was 2,600 total houses built on Hamilton, and there was a shared appreciation model put in place. So Novato has already done teacher housing. This isn't new. This is something we're redoing. I mean, we're so now include that, there's probably 10 projects. So
yeah,
I don't want us to forget our own history.
Yeah, when the air base was developed, a significant amount of it was designated as what I would describe as inclusionary zoning, and the eligibility priorities were set that included public employees and public school district employees were high on that eligibility list.
Okay, I want to add, also looking at this at a more high level, I think it would be super important not only for us to know about land value at entitlement and now would be rough construction cost of these proposed items so that we know ballpark what we're looking at for each of them. So if you could also come back with what it would cost to build each of these scenarios, obviously not the Fans building. But I do think it is important that we look at all of them that were presented today. Other comments, or I will go to public comment. Okay, so public comment, 3 minutes each. We are gonna go first with Matt Gardner and then Dale Klein. I will let you know when you are on deck.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Gardner. I am an elementary school PE teacher in Novato, and I'm a beneficiary of a similar program. I think it was just talked about a minute ago. I live in Meadow Park, and I have a BMR home. So I'm settled, but I know the need here is tremendous, and not just for teachers, but for other employees of Novato Unified. So I'm very interested in what's happening. I wanted to support Derek, and I hope that this program is eventually adopted. I think it'd be wonderful for our teachers and NUSD employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We have Dale now, and then on deck will be Gina. I'm not gonna try, I'm sorry.
Dale Klein, longtime advocate for public education here in Novato. Couple of things that come to mind immediately. Number one, and Debbie, I think you wrapped it up perfectly, is keep our eyes on what the big issue is. We have a need. We have a very real need. We've got a turnover that's better than some districts, but it's still a problem in this district. We have fiscal limitations. If any of us think that state budget is going to get any better in the state in the near future, it's not. I'm looking at several trustees that have been on the board for a while, can remember back to where we had significant issues going on year after year. I don't think we're out of the woods. I think those days are still ahead of us again. And the more that we can do, this is 3 to 5 years down the road, right? This isn't a problem that's going to get solved today, and I have a feeling that 3 to 5 years from now, the situation we're facing is going to be worse, and this is a potential solution to some of the issues we may face. Having said all of that, I think this is the right board. As I look around the room, I think you've hired the right person. The work of this committee and the work of this board so far has been amazing. The speed at which this has been done, this has been talked about for decades, as Ross alluded to. It's happening, and I'm very impressed with the fact, the way it's going and how you guys are handling it so far. So keep up the good work that way. Lastly, public perception. So when it first got announced, as I'm out in the community, I'm hearing all these everybody's scared to death. Fear is a wonderful emotion. How you communicate to the public, I think, is incredibly important. So just keep that in mind. I know everybody here does, but my friends at school feel like, we got this notice. Oh my God, we're not going to have an office space, right? That's a very small problem. I mean, it's just funny. It's just how people react to things. So with that, I commend you on the process you're on. Keep focused where you are currently and where you hopefully will be, and we'll get there. Thank you.
Hi, we have Gina now, and after Gina will be Jeff Bialik.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gina Gilmet, and I serve as the Chief Strategy Officer with Community Action Marin. As you may know, Community Action Marin is the largest human services provider in Marin County. Our work helps individuals and families meet their basic needs, including housing, and forge a path towards self-sufficiency and thriving. And we serve over 5,000 households each year, many Novato residents, across the services focused on addressing the causes and consequences of poverty. Our agency applauds the leadership that you're all taking with this initiative. It's much needed, and we support the goals that you've outlined for this project around increasing diversity, recruitment and retention, and strengthening community. The high cost of living in Marin has widespread effects, and it's imperative that all sectors of our community pursue solutions as you are doing with this initiative. So we thank you for doing this work. We all know that the housing crisis in Marin is impacting all of us. In addition to the schools, hospitals, and other local businesses are challenged with recruitment. Families and retirees who've lived in the community for decades, grown up here, gone to school here, are being forced to move, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a problem that's decades in the making. It's not going to be solved overnight, but the increasing need for local solutions is something that you're meeting with this initiative. So again, appreciation. 3 things that we would ask your consideration of as you move forward with the initiative, and we hope that it will continue to go forward. The one I saw in some of the slides is a focus on family housing, not just 1 and 2 bedroom units, but really doing the work to figure out what's the right mix that's going to meet both the current and prospective future needs for families that you employ. The second is thinking about building on-site childcare. So you heard from my colleague earlier, we're an early childhood provider as one of our areas. We currently don't have enough early childhood education to meet community need across Marin County. And one of the biggest barriers is facilities. There are not facilities for programs like ours and other providers to expand. And as you know, access to early education has a direct impact on kindergarten readiness, that goes, et cetera, et cetera. So as we work to solve the housing crisis, ironically, unless we address the simultaneous childcare need growth, we will be creating a bigger problem in childcare. So it's both cost effective to think about the intersected issues of housing and childcare, and doing it during development is a cost-effective way to address. So we really encourage you to think about working with community partners of how to do those both at the same time. And then finally, I wanted to speak in favor and related to the BAFA bond initiative. So tomorrow morning, myself and many others from Marin will be in San Francisco as the BAFA board considers putting the affordable housing ballot initiative on the ballot across the Bay Area. And we are a founding member of a new coalition in Marin called Housing for All Marin that is in support of the bond measure. And under the money raised, Marin stands to gain $700 million. And so in terms of talking about funding and the cost of doing these developments, that is a real possibility if voters approve it, for that to be accessed. You know, there will be a local decision-making process in Marin for how Marin uses those monies.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing, and we look forward to partnering with you. Thank you.
Definitely. Okay, after Jeff, we have Lana. Last name with an A.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jeff Bialik, and I am a leader with the Marin Organizing Committee and also the chair of the steering committee for Housing Crisis Action Marin. And I'm also a colleague of Gina's, who basically stole all of my talking points. So I just want to echo what Gina has said, and to really applaud and celebrate what you are doing here tonight and every night with regard to this issue. I attend a lot of meetings throughout the county where there are tough, hard-fought battles around housing. And tonight, I'm sitting here listening to this incredible dialogue and conversation with a group of people committed to their community who are looking this crisis right in the face and saying, we are going to do something about it. That is rare, and it is so refreshing, and I just want to say thank you for your vision and your leadership. And help is on the way, as Gina mentioned, with regard to the potential for this ballot measure in November, which we are supporting along with this coalition. And on behalf of the groups that I represent, I want to offer our assistance in any possible way we can as you march down this road. Please know that as you march along, you're not alone, and that we applaud you, we congratulate you, and if I could roll up my sleeves, I'd say let's get to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. After Lana will be Teresa.
Good evening, Board. I'm Lana Adlawan, Director of the Marin County Free Library, and I just want to thank the Board and the District for the partnership we've had for almost the last decade. So we have the South Novato Library located on the Hamilton campus. You know, over this decade, we've checked out just under 1 million items to the community and your school children. We have about 5,000 visitors per month to this location. So we've been thrilled to be really in touch with Derek and the team on this project, and we support, you know, a vision for housing for your workforce. We're in the same boat with the county, especially the library. 60% of the county employees live elsewhere. So it's a challenge for all of us living here. But in terms of a vision for library and workforce housing, we're in full support of working with the district and hope you support that vision of a permanent library in the Hamilton area. We've seen that library grow in usage year after year. We now have a community creative space called The Shop. If any of you haven't been to see it, I hope you do. You'll have to fight the hordes of children coming into the shop after school. So I'm just here to express my support for the project and the partnership with NUSD going forward. You know, together we just issued 7,000 library cards to your students last year. I can't wait to see what else we do together. And in terms of comments from Community Action Marin as well, you know, the library and those partners in terms of providing childcare, access to resources, educational resources, the full component. I really hope that NUSD can really see that as a complement to the project, to recruit those new families coming to the area that will stay. There's nothing I look forward to better than a library where I live, because it's such a community asset. So I'm happy to be a part of this project with NUSD with your support, and truly that vision for a permanent South Novato library. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Teresa, and then Dawn.
Hi, good evening. I do have a loud voice, and this is making it even louder. My name is Teresa Collier, and I'm a retired educator, so I think it goes without saying that I'm definitely in favor of workforce housing, and where I live in Lanham Village in Novato was was my first home, and I was sort of encouraged to buy it as a teacher. I'm speaking now as the president of the Lanham Village Homeowners Association. We are the property that is adjacent to the Hamilton parcel due west. We're an older community built during World War II. These were condos that were renovated and made public, 154 of them. I do have concerns, and I know that my neighbors do also, because we've had two large developments built just north of us at 801 State Access, 802 State Access, and the thought of 200 more units going in to the east of us is a little bit daunting, especially because of egress to our community. As you know, it's surrounded by wetlands, so there aren't too many ways in or out. State access is one, main gate is two, and as it turns out, some of our streets, we have three of them, Martin Drive being one, has become a thoroughfare for a lot of people trying to go in and out of that area. So traffic has definitely impacted us, as has parking. People are parking on our public streets because there are not many options. So I would like you to consider that when you're making your choices. And I'm wondering, how much input will community members have as far as that's concerned? Are you our representatives and you'll be making the final choices, or will we have some more direct input?
Well, I think one of the advantages the community is going to have is that they'll be dealing with their local school district on these issues. That's the agency that's going to be taking the lead on these decisions. And I can assure you that everybody who lives in town with you doesn't like the situation that you're experiencing already. And anything we do, we would go out of our way to help mitigate those things.
Okay, thanks, Derek, and thank you all for your work.
I'll also say that I've been on the group working on this over the past 2 years, and it is of the utmost importance for us to be working in conjunction with our community. Okay, we've got Dawn, and then Bert Hoffman?
Yep. Yeah. Don Nicodemus, former president of the CSCA Chapter 312 here at Novato Unified, and myself and another member of our union has been on the committee. We got down to see the Jefferson Union High School facility there. We were very impressed with it. We were surprised that there was that many, higher percentage of the staff that took up the option to get in the rental units there. So we're very supportive. We're very pleased with the potential of something like this contributing to hiring more quality staff and improving the quality of the schools because of it. The Jefferson Union is a lot like Novato in that it's got neighboring schools and school districts that have better funding. further down the peninsula, and it's helped them retain. That was one of the questions that I asked the staff that we got to talk to that live there. Did they think that it improved the quality of staff? And it does. And you don't necessarily see the decline happening. I mean, maybe the number of people that are going to retire soon might indicate it, but even the numbers of unfilled jobs don't really indicate the quality of staff. You know, how good are your nurses, how good are your IT staff, how good are your crafts workers. Having something like this would go very far. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Bert, and then Zach.
Well, I didn't come here intending to speak tonight, but got drawn into this. And I'm speaking just as an individual, not in any professional capacity that Ross is referring to here. But the project he was referring to, I can speak a lot about that as knowledge. And it was led by, we had a lot of volunteer leadership of some of the legendary builders of Novato donated their time to make Novato come together. So people like Paul Scheller, recently departed, John Stuber, and Reuben Kaler. That's what we owe a debt of gratitude to there, because they knew their way through the building process. And my listening to the conversation tonight, my biggest thought is that you're run a wonderful job running a school district. You're not builders, and that's a word of caution there. I manage 140 something units. It's a whole different can of worms here. I can tell you right now, just try to get insurance on an apartment building right now today. Impossible. So all these little things that you don't think about when you're about creative buildings, you go, wow, I got to get insurance on it. Oh, by the way, you got railing retrofits required by next January. You got all this kind of stuff that comes out there you don't really think about there too much necessarily when you're right at the exciting phase of designing something. Second thing, as far as your entitlements on this Novato is a tough city to get anything built in. You won't find anybody out there who's going to argue with that one, I don't believe. City, hopefully, they got some new administration down there. They're going to sort some things out and make it better, but that's just moving the needle a little ways, probably. The other thing that comes to mind when I listen about this project is that how do you look at the equity for the teachers? Somebody's going to get subsidized, somebody's not. And that's a dollar figure that one needs to put in their head as to what's going on there, because you got to equalize that in some fashion, and I haven't heard that discussed. And then the last thing is, looking at that, how you're spending your money is, you're looking at like a return on investment equivalent here or something. You could just as well be taking that money and handing it to the teacher. Possibly, maybe that's an alternative if you look at other ways to utilize the properties, et cetera. Last but not least, just as a neighbor over there, I wouldn't waste any time at all on the fans. Transportation side is totally unsuitable for housing in any respect, just as a 39-year neighbor down there. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Zach and then Rolf.
Do my stand-up bit. Before I begin, I just want to make clear that these are my own opinions and not reflecting my employer or any organizations I'm affiliated with. That being said, I am a proud NUSD alumnus and in full support of this effort. It's nights like tonight that make me so proud to be from Novato that we are moving forward with, supporting the staff and the teachers that helped educate me and so many Novato students. I also just wanted to thank Derek and the Brookwood Partners team for having so much consideration shown, not just to the potential residents of these properties, to the neighbors of these properties, and to all the different facets that go into making a well-suited design for our communities, be it setting the things back from nearby residences, planning for adequate amounts of parking, because that is a factor. Only 7% of Novato residents currently use public transit. I tried to when I was in high school, and you'll find that a number of NUSD sites, Sinaloa, Pleasant Valley, Lou Sutton, they're all far away from public transit and a bit of a nightmare if you have to walk all the way from a bus stop. So planning for an adequate amount of parking, all this level of detail and analysis, I really, really appreciated it. And I think that makes it a much easier sell for the community to rally behind, as opposed to the project that you discussed, Trustee Gasson. I was there for that. It was not as nice as this meeting. I'm just really excited about these projects. I wanted to leave a few site-specific comments as well. First, for the Hill site, the basketball courts there are kind of a key recreational amenity for kids in the area, and I'm hoping that if you do move forward with that site, that you can either partner with the city or relocate those basketball courts either to the city-owned sites or somewhere else in the property so that kids continue to have a place to play basketball there. When my brother was a kid, he would ride his bike all the way over the hill from the end of Indian Valley to get there to play basketball, and I'm hoping that that can be maintained. I also really like, speaking of considerations that went into this, the variety of different housing types that are made available, and particularly the family housing that might be available at the San Andreas site. I really appreciated having the mix of housing that is going on there. So I apologize for my rambling. I'm just really, really excited by what's going on here and the amount of consideration that has gone into this project so far, the amount of attention that's been paid to the needs of future residents, the existing residents, and I just really look forward to seeing what this board comes up with and what you move forward with. Thank you all so much. Oh, actually, with my last 13 seconds, I want to leave you with one more thought, which was inspired by the comments from the representative from Marin County Free Library, which is potentially looking into collaborations as we move down the line and exhaust the waiting list. There are other agencies in Marin County that have employees that might benefit from this, and that might be a potential way to defray the future costs. If we rent out a fraction of the units once our waiting lists are exhausted, I'm sure that other organizations would be interested in buying in. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ralph O'Rear. I'm Vice President of Facility Development with the Northgate Children's Center. I want to join the chorus of supporters for the initiatives that you've undertaken to solve a very big problem that not only the district has, but every employer that I've ever worked for over the last 3 decades in the for-profit and nonprofit world. You're uniquely situated to self-help. Companies don't have the ability to take land that could be characterized as a stranded asset and turn it into something that solves one of the biggest problems in building a vibrant and vital, innovative workforce. So in that sense, that unique situation puts you back into one of the things that the man said is you're not really real estate developers, but this is a real estate component that is inextricably linked to a vital workforce and teachers who can come to work without stressing about their daily lives. Also would like to add support for the idea that you expand the thinking to include early childhood educators. I mean, I think you can, I think many of you are aware that the Children's Center is currently developing a 20,000 square foot building at 932 C Street in Hamilton. And to the extent that we've learned a lot of lessons about the entitlement process, we're certainly willing to share our experiences with you and add any support that can happen there. But the idea that the unique situation that you have that could be expanded to meet your priorities, of course, but also to provide an option that doesn't currently exist with early childhood educators and other people who also need access to workforce housing. So it's not an easy thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. So I applaud the effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions or comments from the board? Okay. Yes?
Say one thing.
Yeah.
One thing I've heard is that 200 is definitely a too low a number. If we just take 35% of 855, that gets us to right on the nose of 300. I'm thinking it's gonna be 300 plus. But anyway, I'm just putting that out there.
you can see me thinking like, and I just, a comment to, it was something that someone had said, the rules around housing and how long people can stay and who gets access to it and who gets priority. I know that all of those things are fleshed out later in the process. That's a whole nother can of worms. When is that?
Yeah, that might be referred to like the lease up part. And the advice is to start after you get the development plan during while you're waiting for EIRs and construction actually take place. You would create your public benefit corporation. It's an independent entity that would have a separate board. That board would be chartered with a majority of this board as mandatory membership of that particular entity, and they'd be responsible for setting those eligibility requirements. There's several examples to go by, not only for education workforce housing, but for other public employee types of housing that's out there. And so I'll be bringing that information forward at the right time, but we'll figure that out, what works for Novato together.
Great. And just a shout out to you, Derek. I mean, a lot of the support here, I think, speaks to how collaborative you have been with our community. The fact that there is so much support here, really speaks to the work that you have done. So just a huge thank you to you for, the love fest that we're having here. I think really speaks to a lot of the work that you have done. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Did you have something?
One comment?
Yes, go ahead.
So my interest is in making sure we have a business model as well as a physical development model. We've got a lot of expertise in this room, and I've heard everything from, you're a school board, you're not a property developer, be careful, don't try to do something you're not good at. We've got partners that'll help us in that regard, but the business model is key to how all this fits together. If you don't have the financial model, you don't have the strategy for long-term benefit. Bert talked about making sure we had he had good solid developers in his pocket that made the Novato program work. That was his key to success. So I think that's something we need to learn from this evening's comments. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm just going to second, I was going to touch on what Bert was saying, but I think kind of nailing it down, I'm guessing it would be during, I'm not sure which phase, development, when we kind of decide between rental versus sale and all that sort of stuff. Where would that take place in the timeline? Or the mix, if we do a mix?
I think the best I could do for that right now would be to say that it's scheduled to be a bigger part of our September 23rd advisory
sooner
committee
rather than later.
Where
Okay.
we have to kind of get to that decision in order to know. We will do, the feasibility study will include analysis on a lot of that, and without getting into it here, there's advantages and disadvantages to both, but I think it would be very, very difficult for us to do some kind of shared equity sale situation. Yeah.
Totally agree. I'm just...
But we're going to prove that.
Yeah, and taking to heart what I'm hearing, what would be helpful when we get to the point where we're talking about, let's say we're going to do rentals, is to have some sort of pro forma P&Ls that we can look at so we can get a sense of not only of the dollars and the percentages, if you will, but also the scope, just how broad, how many things are we responsible for. So Bert brings up fire insurance. Good point. Pretty tough to get insurance today. But compliance, mandates, all that kind of stuff. That would be helpful, just so we know what we're in for. And you're probably already doing that, but I just want to check.
It's complicated.
Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Gasson?
So I'm thinking about all the comments that were made tonight, and it's making my mind go a little crazy, and I'm wondering how, I know it's one of those things where it's going to be hard to really narrow in, and you have to have certain things that you understand, and then calculate costs, and so it seems like a lot of moving things. So I feel as though what I heard tonight is that we've asked you to figure out what it would be to take the what's the first level? Not encumbrance. What's the word? Entitlements. Thank you. Entitlements on the properties. I think you had asked for, cost construction things based on the models. But is that kind of hard if we don't know what is? It feels like there's so many scenarios out there. Is there a way that you can kind of synthesize like how much just a unit would be for like a single? Or how does that work for you guys? Is that tangible to be able to do in a way that we can understand it?
The good news is, having developed properties for years now, the questions that you're raising, we will be able to address the kind of the full range of issues that you're asking about, and kind of and we believe, and we've typically done it in our advisory role, been able to explain it as clearly. Chris is able to explain it as clearly as the financial approach and the business model and the how to approach entitlements and development as he did this evening. So I think you'll get. I'm convinced you'll get everything you're asking for, and I think you've given us enough feedback to be able to answer those.
I mean, because the impression I got is you explained the 3 different parking options, and one is more expensive than the other. But I'm thinking, some of the conversations about if we want to put in childcare, that kind of stuff seems like it's the extra on top of just a regular housing model. So whatever you guys do, I'm looking forward to it. I feel like it's a lot of little pieces, and we haven't figured that, it's like the cart before the horse. Which,
so again, we want to look at the high level information, and then we'll dive deeper. And at that point, we'd be able to look at what is an operating budget of this site that we like. If we added this, this, and this, what does that change to make the rentals now higher, et cetera? But that's when we got a little bit more in the weeds.
Right. Well, I wasn't worried about the rental costs. It was more about the building costs of how much money would we have to raise to build stuff. So you guys, I know you guys have done this before, but that's where my head was going when we were having these conversations, that the different layouts, there seems like so many different scenarios with just the layouts.
And I should tell you, we've already engaged a cost estimator that we work with on many other projects. So we will have we will kind of vet the construction costs in Novato, for 3-story, for 4-story, for 4/1, and we'll have those as a model that would be give us the information we need to get to the high level discussion that you're hoping to have. Yeah, but thank you, and we'll hope.
Okay. Do you want us to wrap up what we're kind of expecting for August, or do you feel like you've got it all captured? What's your preference on how we close this out? Or Derek's got something. Derek's got it. Okay, anything else anyone from the board would like to add?
I mean, I think I have just one question.
Yeah.
That is, there's some scenarios where we presented 2, 3, 4, 5 stories, and we think we're always being thoughtful about where it's appropriate to put more building height and density versus other places. I think the general, so some of you didn't comment on that, so I think that probably means you don't have a strong opinion. I think I'm hearing some places that you think demand is actually higher than 200, so I'm reading that as more is better as long as it's appropriate. Is that kind of a right read of?
I think the sentiment is that in the same vein that we don't want to rule out rental versus purchase, at this point we really want to know what all of our options are before we take anything off the table or close the door on anything.
I know I was talking about numbers. Is there a general consensus that 200 is likely low?
I don't know what that would be.
Okay, fair enough. So I think we need to work on that, but if you guys can give us the Jefferson, what we're talking about, so we can have a better idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have my
But
opinion.
I think that we also have to look at what are we going to be able to afford to build and when. We have many options. This can be a more long-term rollout. We don't have to build 300 units on the first site in order to accomplish our goals.
That's where I was going. I would prefer to keep the consideration to the density and look at how you can combine 2 sites is kind of where I was thinking versus, because I just didn't see a scenario that met our needs initially anyway. So, in one site, yeah.
Trustee Miller?
I would add a consideration. The whole point of this exercise is to meet teachers' housing need. This isn't an affordable housing project. This isn't a community of Novato project. This is school district assets being used to benefit school teachers or school faculty, staff.
Employees.
Employees, the general category, which could be the IT director, or it could be the history teacher. So when I see studio apartments, I wonder how that helps, because when I want a teacher to come and teach in my schools, I expect my kids and her kids or his kids are going to be in class together. I'm expecting they're a family person in a family industry educating kids, and so I think the 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom model would, the higher numbers of those studio apartments may be for a certain percentage, but probably a lower percentage than others have been thinking. So that's there's my additional 2 cents that you asked for.
Appreciate that. I think we share your sentiment on studios. We didn't include any in the Daly City project, and we wouldn't propose them here.
Can I just share something that I know from the project, from the process at Daly City, and I'm paraphrasing, so apologies if this is incorrect. So they did initial surveying, and then they decided what to build, and then they went back and did more surveying to sort of look at what was needed. They found that they needed a bike storage room, which in retrospect they would have made bigger if they had realized, but things like that were the needs of the people that they thought would actually live there became very important at the point in which they were making decisions about what they were building.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
Can I add one other thing about the number of levels and density and things like that? I wonder about traffic flow in the areas. And I don't know, is there a formal traffic flow study? This is a new field for me. I could be like, I think the traffic flow would be fine, but, is there a more formal process for assessing traffic flow? I presume there is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole category of engineers called transportation engineers, and they can do, I think if we selected a site and a general concept, that would be one of the things that we would be doing early on, is looking at traffic. And then it's typically something that's studied as part of the CEQA process, environmental review.
So we would choose a site first and then have that assessment. Is that not a part of how we go about selecting a site?
Yeah, it can be something that you might want to do sooner than later in the process, and not wait until the formal study for CEQA. But we're not planning to do any traffic studies as part of this initial feasibility study, but it could be part of the next steps if it's something that you're concerned about.
Okay, they've all gone quiet. Thank you very much. We will see you again in August.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Okay. Our next regular board meeting will be August 6th. Hope to see you there.